Hello. Welcome to the Exatos.
Synctank.
Well, it's crazy. I mean, like a lot of people, my mom told me this one. She's like, it seems like a lot of people after the ghost ship. She's like, it seems like a lot of people die. Like, well, yeah. But Oliver Tree just passed away in a helicopter accident in Rio de Janeiro, which is really crazy because, he's a friend. We did like short films together. I was just watching like some clips that I had because I was going through an old hard drive and it had like clips of him just the other day. And yeah, all of a sudden, Anna Nicole Wordsmith posted like, do you know this kid? Because he's from Santa Cruz. And I saw posting
did he
it.
go to Harbor? Was he a Harbor?
Yeah,
guy,
he went to Harbor High with my little brother.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So in one of his first videos, he's wearing my mom's ski jacket. Like, that's how much I miss that kid now. Like, I know
I wanted to have him on the show. That sucks, dude. That's beyond sucks. Helicopter accident. Jesus
It's
Christ!
so crazy.
Was he gonna jump out of the helicopter with a razor? Is that like one
I
of
don't
those
know the story yet.
He had the world's largest what do you call it? Is that called a razor? Is there another name for that? What is that?
Razor scooter. Yeah.
It's the scooter. Yeah. Like he had the world's largest scooter. like it's just like insane. Like the stuff that he did. You watch his music videos. Some of them are just freaking unreal, dude.
Yeah. He like went to the Ukraine and stuff. He did some amazing, cool stuff. And, he's really artistic. And I mean, yeah, he went to Cal Arts for a little while. And so he worked with a lot of like interesting kids down there as well. I mean, he was just a fun, cool person, and he got out of drugs because Santa Cruz can do that to you. And he started making cool art. And yeah, it's a bummer.
I felt like he was going to make a movie eventually is what it felt like. It's like this guy is like so good at directing and doing all this stuff. It's like they're so epic. Those are the most epic music videos I've ever seen, and they're so like indie but not feeling indie. Like they feel like they're so well, the production level is just insane. But yeah,
we made a short film. The Alien, because I had to Google him because I like the face was familiar to me, but I've never met him. I didn't know him, and that was what came up. It was like the Alien,
because that was his album. I mean, he was like a kid from Santa Cruz who wore Jinko jeans and like Smash Mouth. He was emulating like our generation because he's a few years younger, but he did like a really good job of being this like 2001 millennial looking thing that was these like affluent kids with too many toys kind of look, which was really funny. And he was a good musician and creative. He was making all sorts of cool music even when he was like 15. Yeah, it's a bummer.
Yeah. Windbreakers.
Yeah, dude, Windbreakers for sure. It's like totally the Paul Sweet.
Yeah,
Oh,
I probably met him at Paul Sweet parties. I don't remember meeting him in person, but it's very unlikely that I didn't at some point and just didn't,
yeah, he's
realize
also
or whatever.
super
Yeah.
young, like he was I forget, but
He went to those Paul Sweet parties though, right?
yeah, but he was like 4 or 5 years younger than me, I think, at least. So he was
yeah, and you're younger than me. So,
I guess maybe no.
Yeah,
I guess he's like 3 years younger, right?
But when I would
right?
go to those Paul Sweet parties, it's like there's so many younger folks there, that I was just like, it was a whole like there's a generational scene thing happening, and I'm the old fuck even when I was like in my 20s, It's like
Yeah, the numbers seem different when you're that young, though. It's like the difference between 15 and 20 seemed like a lot more. I felt like, but or 20 and 25 or 25 and 30 at those parties.
totally.
But I mean, we made a short film where I thought the plot was like I'm like time traveling or I'm seeing the past, but it's just like other people doing the same crap that I do. So so he's like me. I'm like, oh my God, I'm like traveling through time because he's doing the same. He's talking to a girl and making the same mistakes in this college campus situation that I would make in the past or something. And we made all kinds of cool short films, like did like mini golf stuff, and he would get like holes in one. I don't know. It's a bummer. He was a funny kid who made fun music, like really specific music. And he did this thing with his mouth all the time.
Right.
Like it was the most exaggerated, like West Coast punk hardcore mouth movement. It was brilliant.
How much of that was like for a show? Like how much
all
of
of
that
it. That's the brilliance of it. This
Yeah.
kid knew what to do. He was like a theater person. Like he was a talent as in his core, in his nature. That's the thing.
Yeah, he had insight into Santa Cruz too. If you ever watch his podcast segments, when he would just discuss the nature of the college versus people in the town and how the dynamics that existed with there, nail on the head. Like in terms, like I'm like, dude, it's a niche topic if you don't know like with what Santa Cruz is in terms of our relationship to the college. Like I
don't. I assume it's just the same as LA or San Francisco or anything else.
No, so think of it like this. So like Santa Cruz was America, right? Like it is the most. I can't tell if the mirroring is right, but this is the most West Coast point because California does this thing. So it's as west as you can get. And if you watch Titanic, you can see like you're gonna die. You're not gonna die. You're gonna live, Rose. You're gonna go to the boardwalk. And there's like the last thing you see of her is that she went all the way to California and went to Santa Cruz because that was the thing. You get $300, which is a lot back then, train ride through America, and you take this train to this like redwood forest. It's in the middle of nowhere. It's like this beautiful Victorian tourist trap like Hawaii, right? And then after a certain amount of time, actors out of LA, they're moving there. So there's like mansions in the woods and it's like this beautiful thing that's going on. And then you've got, industry that's in San Francisco, but all these things are kept away from it because it's on this crazy country mountain road that you can only bring like logs on by wagon. It's so isolated. The only way in is by train. So these rich people are taking trains to the beach and everything, but that's it until World War II, when I don't know if it's real or just petroleum and car company, like oil company conspiracy, but they convinced everybody that the Japanese, that they could get to California because, look at these paper lamps. These lamps, you put a little candle in it and the paper floats up and it floats around. These kids are sending them across from Japan and they could add bombs to them. On these paper lamps, they could get here. If they could get here, then the Japanese could get here, and eventually they're going to blow up our infrastructure. And the first thing they're going to do is take out the bridges. So we can't have those bridges because actually, if we don't blow up the bridges, they're not just going to blow them up. They're going to use those bridges to get through California. So we have to blow. So they blew up all the bridges that connected California. And before that, California was just like easy. You could get anywhere, zip, zip, zip through like Japan on trains. But they cut them in World War II. And all of a sudden, to get to Santa Cruz is like 4 hours on a 1-lane road where there's no divide between you and oncoming traffic. That I remember going to the Hell Road, the Road of Death in Bolivia. and they're trying to freak
Oh,
me out.
I thought you were talking about the Devil's Slide, but yeah, go ahead.
Well, that's my point. So I'm like there in Bolivia in the Andes, and it's in the Potosi region, but I'm still like up in the clouds, and it looks like Turok or something, just like dinosaurs. And I'm thinking to myself, this is not as dangerous as Highway 17. Like this is not as nearly as bad as the road that I had to drive every day to go to school. It's like completely insane, you know.
The guy who designed Highway 17 actually, I don't know, this seems weird to me. I kind of have an attitude about it, but it's like he killed himself over the amount of deaths on the road.
It's like the mystery house, and then this guy were neighbors. Yeah,
totally.
Add one more.
And when I was a kid with Devil's Slide, I was so scared.
There will be a death on that road today.
5-6 years old or something, and I was like, oh no! Like if we went over Devil's Slide, I was like, I got all scared because it was like the name and the way that it was treated. It's like, oh yeah, no, it's a dangerous road, you know.
But there will be deaths on that road today. That's what's crazy. And they do have a divide now, but it's just still insane. Like every day people die. It's a terrible road, and we just don't have the infrastructure for it. And California is, run by the Antichrist. So
my granddad had a stroke halfway over Highway 17 while driving a busload of people, and he finished the route before going checking out.
What a hero! What a hero! And then
you guys are, I guess, from the outside looking in, it sounds like you're describing Santa Cruz like it's The Village from M. Night Shyamalan.
Sure, it's a little like that.
Yeah. It's a valley. It's a valley, and we're surrounded by mountains. And so there's all this stuff. I don't know the complete validity of it, but there's kind of this folklore, and I don't know if that's the operative, but that Santa Cruz, the way it's positioned, there was this idea that from my understanding, like the natives who lived here didn't really spend much time in the valley other than to like gather certain things. Like they would go down, they'd bring it back. So they all live for the most part in the surrounding mountains. And so like this area for us to like inhabit it as we do isn't something that they did. So like, and there's also this idea that at a certain point, when this was all happening and natives were losing their, this is no longer they're not experiencing this as their land. There's like this resentment, and there's like that kind of like this idea that there was like a curse put on the valley that people will try to leave, but they won't ultimately be able to leave. Like they're going to be like that. They're kind of like stuck in this kind of like vortex that exists within.
Funny the way you describe that. There's a new TV show out called Widow's Bay. That's the premise.
It's kind of more like Widow's Bay.
Spoilers, but the premise is that if you're born on this island, which is supposed to be like a mocking version of whatever Stephen King basically writes about, and that if it's out on this island, if you're born there, that anything that you do to try and leave that island, like either it'll bring you back or you'll die on the way out of it, and that you're like locked into this, and then it's like a curse that has to be lifted.
You can check out anytime you like, but you can never leave,
Yeah. It's got that.
Is Hotel California about Santa Cruz?
Kinda, yeah. Or San Diego. There's a lot of vortices in places where they're, like the earthquake places. And so Santa Cruz is known for being, a vortex that you get sucked into and it's hard to escape. But it's maybe more like Widow's Bay crossed with Terra Nova or something like that. It's like a New English colony that was placed on top of a Native American what's that movie? Poltergeist. You didn't move the bodies kind of thing.
Shining.
It's like, well, no, it's
same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You didn't move the bodies. And so Santa Cruz you originally have like Monterey named after like a person, San Francisco, all these places that were named after the finders. They wanted to name Santa Cruz Branciforte after the Branciforte guy, but the natives apparently, it's like a folklore story. Natives called it Sacred Crossing or something like that. And then an earthquake happened and destroyed the church that the Spanish built up on where is now Main Street, where there is now a new church that's like elevated above the Costco and it like is up on a hill. And so they rebuilt there. But they stopped they have the strip Branciforte that's into the woods, but the rest of the downtown is still called Santa Cruz, which is like Holy Cross, but also reflects the sacred crossing of like this
because saint. So you can almost say like saintly cross, I think would be one way to put it. But yeah, Holy Cross works because it's not saying that this is this is a saint named cross or something. It's like, it's just
Yeah. St. Cruz or something. Yeah, so they have a lot of weird like folklore stories also in Santa Cruz too. Like there's like all kinds of hidden gold or like Native Americans or ghosts or the Chinese beach with all the people that were killed there. There's a lot of weird stuff that.
Wait, what about the Chinese beach?
So like Santa Cruz, like when you think about the Holocaust or the Nazis or something, like it's weird when you do all day. I know that's what you do. They're thinking about the German internment camps, but as a Californian, especially at that time, because I knew Japanese Californians that were like in their 80s, that were working at our schools. They were in internment camps when we were kids, and so they had taken all of the Japanese and Chinese along the coast of California and put them in internment camps. And so we'd known that that these people had been like treated like.
Well, I heard the Japanese angle of that they also put Chinese people in. Like, was it just like, you look a certain way, get in the bus?
So it goes back further. It's like, oh wow, you find out in school, you're like, oh, that's terrible that they did this one time to the Japanese. But then you find out actually they do this over and over again in California. At one point, Asian people just generally weren't allowed to own property. They weren't allowed to marry. They weren't allowed to have regular jobs. And there had been a lot of Chinese and Japanese that had been settled across the long coast of California for hundreds of years. And so in Aptos, there was a place where there were a lot of Japanese that were settled. But for whatever reason, the like Ku Klux Klan or something in Santa Cruz called it Chinaman Beach, right? Even though they were Japanese people there. And this is like in the 19th century, but they killed as many as they could.
KKK in Santa Cruz in liberal California? Yeah. I thought that was only like Kentucky or Alabama or something.
Yeah. Like you can see like KKK marched through Santa Cruz in like the 1950s. It's in like the Sentinel newspaper.
They marched through, or was there like a base there?
I mean, they have like white supremacist meetings at Jamba Juice in Santa Cruz.
They still do. I had a few interactions with, because there's a whole underground Nazi scene or white supremacist scene in Santa Cruz. I don't know if they're sponsored by the Southern Poverty Law Center or what was going on, but.
Or by
no, there was a guy that one time came in when I used to work in a record store, and he was wearing like a shirt with like Mickey Mouse with a swastika or whatever. And it was just the two of us, and we had like this long conversation, and he was telling me about meetings and stuff if I wanted to be involved. He was just very openly racist. And and then like at a certain point in the conversation, I like just told the guy, I was probably, for context, I was probably like 25 at the time. I'm like almost 45 now, but he was like, he was inviting me, like, if you want to, like, he was just assuming that like I was on the same page as him or something. And I was like, hey, by the way, I'm Jewish. I mean, I'm a certain percentage Ashkenazi, whatever. But I told him, and then all of a sudden he was just like, he resented the fact that we had connected talking for like an hour before I told him this, and he was just like, he didn't buy a record, let me put it that way.
I think I saw a version of this in Falling Down. No, isn't that the Falling Down scene?
No, it has a lot of arrests too. So like I think being arrested and put into prison in California is very high probability. It's a higher probability than being put in a gulag in the Soviet Union at any point collectively.
Yeah. So he told me he had like 200 people at a time would show up for these big meetings that they would have. And he was like, how do you keep, and I was just asking questions for someone, because I was like, how do you keep something like that underground so well that you have that many people showing up to an event, and yet this is, you're still on the DL somehow? Like, that's crazy. I mean, that's what he claimed. I don't know,
as long as you live exactly on the coast. I think a lot of the rest of California is more reactionary to how blue the coast of California is. So you go to Bakersfield, that's not going to be a problem, right?
It's crazy, just because I guess the version of California that you get today, and then hearing that it's like it was full of racists. So like the next thing you're going to be like, oh, they probably had the biggest eugenics program in the entire United States. That wouldn't be true.
So like if you look at New York City and you thought the rest of New York State was like New York City, like upstate New York and like all of these like country places.
That's where I came from.
Catskills or something. Then you'd be confused.
Literally Catskills, yeah.
If you just thought that like all of New York must look like Manhattan, right? In California, you could do the same thing and say it all looks like Hollywood Boulevard, but there's a lot more of California than there is of New York. So it's even more, it'd be if you thought that all of the East Coast, because California is basically the whole West Coast. So if you thought New York and Florida were the same thing, if Louisiana was the same thing, if Georgia, if Canada, like that's how much like every part of California, because it is a country basically, and there's even parts of it that were stolen, you know. Baja.
Yeah.
It almost sounds like a monopoly that needs to be broken up.
It was, and that's the other crap thing, because like Nevada was part of California and Arizona, New Mexico. So at one point in Oregon, not New Mexico, Arizona, I think, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So California was this giant thing bigger than Texas, and they split it up into the shape of an owl, right? Like that's the whole.
It's totally an owl. It's true. It's so Bohemian Grove is here, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Owlifornia.
I know. I tripped out on that.
How close is Santa Cruz to Bohemian Grove?
I mean, I've driven there.
Yeah, it's like a couple hours, you know.
Yeah.
It's not that far.
Yeah, I had friends that lived like right next door, and I stayed at their place before, and I didn't hear it myself, but they were like, when the, you know, not just the cremation of care, but like for that full 3 weeks, it's 3 weeks, right? That they're out there. They were like, they would hear the most insane sounds, and they were like describing them to me. They're like from the woods, like people screaming and whatever, and like they can't tell if somebody's actually just like, if they're having a good time or being just weird, or if somebody's literally being like tortured and they're like trying, like they don't know, you know, they're just like, it's screaming.
Death whistle, right?
Well, it could be est type behavior. Like, I don't know, like they don't know if this is just like some cathartic, like, you know, the same thing happens at Yale, right? With the people come close to, I mean, there's examples of that being recorded where they can hear the screams coming from the Skull and Bones place, and they're just like, is that the cathartic exercise, or is somebody actually being injured? Like, it's hard to know if there's actual torture happening there, or if somebody's doing some kind of exercise.
It's funny you brought that up, because I literally just saw, like, last night I saw a documentary on Est, or it was like an old one from like 1983.
I've probably seen it.
The documentary we call Captive Minds, and it was originally supposed to just be for universities and like psychology, you know, experts and stuff, but it ended up, I guess, going on a DVD, and it was on like Demonoid and like one of those big packets where it's like, you know, the ultimate hypnosis pack or whatever. But it was showing Est, and also mentioned the Silva mind control. Remember that? Like, it was like a marketed version of Est, but for like Miss Cleo kind of crowd. And that it was like a bridge between Est, which is what you're talking about, or people were like laying down in a big room on little pillows and just kind of like screaming, just getting all of it out of their system. Some people were crying, and then there was another section of them that were getting into like past life regression and basically screaming out like the trauma from multiple lifetimes. And
like when they say that trauma from multiple lifetimes, whatever the case is, like something is happening. And like you look at these people, like I think it was Joni Mitchell, John Denver, like some of the people who are just like very like centered and deep people. I mean, you can make fun of John Denver if you want, but the truth is he's like very like, you know, his state was affected.
People make fun of John Denver?
Yeah.
For what?
Sunshine on my nutsack makes me happy.
You can never tell, like, if he's really not singing about crack. Like, it's possible. You know what I mean? Like, it's totally possible that he's like a naive, innocent guy, except there's no way, right? Like, he
always just seemed like a Mormon country singer in a way.
Yeah, but see, but like Al Gore's wife liked him. You know, he's clearly,
of course, evil. Yeah, of course.
Clearly, I don't have anything against John Denver.
I have nothing against him. I'm just saying he was probably more into the Eyes Wide Shut parties than you'd ever.
I don't think so.
I don't think he was like skinning deer and wearing them like while running around in the woods.
No, I mean, I'm always open. Like if something came out about John Denver, I could think whatever. But like as it stands, I feel like he represents something that's like that he actually had, and he went completely into Est. Like he went the full way, and I feel like I'm not opposed to Est at all. Like I feel like that's like an important thing, like to have that. It's like, you know, the end of Midsommar, if they're not actually doing a human sacrifice, but the worst thing that apparently is happening is that you're not allowed to use the bathroom, so you're just going to piss yourself. Like that seems to be the worst accusation of Est that I can find. Do you have another, like, this is the end of Mad Men, you know, like when at Esalen, when Don Draper, like, is like crying in somebody's arms or whatever. It's like, I mean, is supposed to be a play on Est because they did the Est exercises there. So he's basically like that's what he's a part
but I
of.
mean, I don't know. It just seems like if he's that into Zen Buddhism, he's probably a psychopath. And like he's so into the country, he's into hunting. And I'm not saying that hunting necessarily. I mean, but if you like to kill animals, that is a statistic. And I don't know. Just the more you think about John Denver, I mean, right? Am I wrong?
I'm not gonna make John Denver the bad guy. No, I mean, unless I have something that I can actually look at. There, okay.
I just can't imagine that he was just like this innocent guy.
I don't know if you guys know this about me, but I'm pretty little like bad faith when it comes to people. Like I have to see some very legitimate thing that checks out before I'm like, yeah, fuck that person. You know?
Yeah, I'm not saying that. I don't have a problem with John Denver. I'm just saying, actually, I would have a bigger problem with John Denver if he was a Lego character, which is the way he's presented. Like, you know, like The Rock presents himself. There's this public
like a
image.
Ken doll,
yeah, a very two-dimensional image that I doubt very much. It seems dubious, and he's more likely you know, very intense in certain moments. Like I can imagine him yelling and like being fierce.
This is rhetorical, but why is it that the people who are like the most private people are I say it's rhetorical. Why are they so often the ones that will just like entertain the most like extreme? Like,
what do they got to hide? Why are they hiding?
Right. Why are you hiding? Why don't you want a camera in your house? You got something to hide?
Yeah.
Remember Volunteers with the CIA agent with the knife? He talks to his knife. He's named his knife and everything. Like that character to me, no.
I don't know, man. I mean, David Bowie named himself after a knife, and I have yet to see the real dirt on him. Even this thing with that groupie that they passed around with Led Zeppelin or whatever, and she was like, "Oh no, he was just very sweet to me." You know? Okay, I don't know, dude.
David Bowie's more like forward about his.
I mean, there's naming your knife, and then there's naming yourself after a knife. You know what I mean? Like, what's worse?
All right. I totally see. See a scary side of John Denver.
Somebody says in the comments, "What about Weird Al?"
Yeah,
was
Weird Al's cool. I saw him once in a church because he's a vegetarian Presbyterian or something like that.
Is that story true about the guacamole and him and what's his name? The not Wolfman Jack, the other guy, Dr.
Demento.
Yeah, it was Dr. Demento. Yeah, where he gives him the guacamole with the LSD. And he's like, this guacamole tastes weird, but LSD doesn't taste like anything. So he's like, well, of course, it's loaded with LSD. And that's how he came up with, what was it, Eat It or something? I forget what the story was.
No, I don't think so, but maybe. I mean, I know that he like ate too many hot dog Twinkie sandwiches in UHF, and so he became a vegetarian. But
I'm saying that like Weird, the Al Yankovic story. I'm 100. This is exactly what happened for all intents and purposes. It's like one of those things that just might as well.
It must be true because it was not in the movie. By that logic, anything that happened in the movies, you know. So
he had a recounting of like the origin story of his name, but it was the least interesting sequence of events ever. It was like I was weird as a kid, so people called me Weird Al, and then he got invited or submitted to wanted to do like a radio DJ thing at college, and they were like, "So what's your call name?" And he was like, "Well, I've already kind of got this name," and that was the whole story, that he was weird.
I love how Chris Knowles calls like liberals Lieber Als. Because it's like it's Lieber L, but it works even better actually. But yeah,
it's close to Alice, you know.
Yeah. But yeah, no, that's I don't know. L is Elohim, right? For Lieber L. So the Book of the Law is literally, you know, Book of Elohim. But yeah, there's significance there. There's Kabbalistic significance with why L, because those two letters flank the arrangement.
The elite or like Elites.
If you form the 22 letters, or you could use the major arcana of a tarot deck, right? So if you lay them out as a Vesica Piscis, you'll end up with Aleph on one side and Lamed on the other as adjustment or justice in the Marseille tarot. But there's a rearrangement of those letters that you go from L to Oz basically. But yeah, or not Oz.
When are you going to put together like David Charles Plate's Introduction to Kabbalah?
Well, I'll tell you,
It has to be like Mr. Rogers, where you're like changing his sweater the whole time.
This project that I'm working on with Ryan, it looks like the second episode is going to be going into some Kabbalah, and so we're still working on that one. The first episode's pretty much done. I mean, this is a long time coming, but the second episode does like, apparently, I haven't watched it yet, but apparently the stuff that he's using is largely like a deep dive of Kabbalistic stuff. So that should be fun. But it's hard to sometimes visually represent that stuff, especially because like if you actually study Kabbalah through the Zohar, you don't have any depictions or like visual representations. So if you're making a video and you want to visually communicate it, it's a little weird because so much of it is a visualization exercise.
You should do a show like Kabbalah Bus, and it's like you pick up random pictures, and then they're trapped in the bus, and then you just talk to them about Kabbalah. Like right in the back seat next to them. Like,
oh, when you said that, I was thinking like All of Us, but like Kabbalah of Us or something. Yeah,
I like Kabbalah of Us. Yeah,
I heard that differently.
That seems like a marketing thing for the state of Israel. But that was cool.
Almost like it's like a episode of Barney, but David Charles' play is Barney.
That's not bad. Yeah.
So Thomas, you wanted to, speaking of which, I know this is the subject that everybody's going towards, and I expressed to Thomas that because people communicate this to me, the show's called Synctank. So when we just get into the same political stuff that people are seeing all over social media, it's kind of like I'll definitely like go and speak to it, but at the same time, I like to look at synchronicity. But you had a question, Thomas, for me that you said before the show.
Oh, I was happy to leave this out because I agree. I think Synctank should be more about just like random synchronicities. Okay, well, you had a post where it was like, I'm sick of people calling Israel an ethno state. It's got, represented by all these other people, yada, yada, yada.
Right. I don't think I said I'm sick of. I'm very much a stickler for like what my specific articulation was. But
it might be fair because Israel's probably not an ethno state because it's like actually a religious hierarchy, like it's a religious supremacy, but because of the way the religion works, men are at the hierarchy. So you could say it's a religious supremacy, intelligentsia of a patriarchy, right? That's controlling.
In terms of, if you're talking about Orthodox Judaism, that there's
not necessarily
like a woman may not be allowed to blow in a shofar or like, whatever, but,
But it's not necessarily the Orthodox that have the most power, I think, either.
Well, I guess I'm coming from this from outside of whatever current political conflict is going on or whatever the opinions are going on. I'm pretty much agnostic, not apathetic, but like agnostic almost of the whole situation. But when it comes to the definition of words and semantics and etymology, like I'm all in. Like it's one of my favorite topics. So I guess
there's definitions
of ethno state seems like it matches every single definition of what Israel was created to be and like defined as on paper. Even if you ignore what its current state is right now, everything on paper was kind of designed to be what the textbook definition of ethno state would be. The only time it would not go with the actual definition is that if you consider that its current state, it's not a full-on ethno state.
Not even close. No,
not even
20-30% of Israel is Arab. And so, and they're even on the judiciary and even elsewhere. So like, it's a matter of relativity. So if you just like compare it to other places, like Pakistan has a much, much, much stronger argument for being a technical ethno state. So it's just like, and so, but why the focus in the way that it is? And so like, you'll see like people in the comments are like, oh, David fucking Charles Play is gonna spread Hezbollah now. It's just like, I'm like, dude, I can't even like, I'm just looking at definitions. This is the same stuff I'm seeing everywhere, where it's like a man is a woman now. Like it doesn't matter. Like everything's muddy in the waters.
But it's still a state where there is a hierarchy that is in control. That's a smaller group, a smaller demographic of the population, right? And they have sympathy towards a wider group of the population, but not all of the population. So even if it's like this Ashkenazi elite that's a small core of the intelligentsia, they still have a broader sympathy towards the Orthodox that they don't share with the Arab demographic, which is, as you just pointed out, a sizable population.
But
Right.
even through all of like the political and like soft language, but isn't the entire reason that there's an Israel right now, like on modern maps, through the Balfour Declaration, which basically declared like a place for Jewish people to have a home? That, I mean, I'm obviously paraphrasing it, but isn't
Right,
that
but
like
Sure,
its
but like,
original
isn't the
intent?
population of Palestine today like the result of genocide and crusades a few centuries earlier? I mean, realistically, the people who live in Palestine today are not people that lived in Palestine 2,000 years
no,
ago.
where did Palestine get its name?
From the Crusades.
What does
the
the word
Bible.
Palestine come from etymologically?
It's like the Holy Stone or something. What is it again?
See, this is the thing. I'm finding that like at least 95% of people that like, I don't even want to say this, ask people this question online. It's like a gotcha, because what people will do is they'll just run to look it up.
I'll know it by the time
I'm just
you
like,
said
if you, yeah, no, it's Philistine. It's from the
from the Philistines. Okay, yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So, and who named it that? Why is it named that? Where did it come from?
Tell me, is it Josephus? What is the reason?
It's well, close. It's Rome.
Okay.
So Rome, when Jerusalem was sacked, when Judea was conquered after 100-year occupation, so people who are really opposed to occupation and colonization, like the Romans conquered Judea and renamed it after Israel's biggest enemies from ancient times. So, and if you listen to Hamas,
Palestine kind of looks like
they will insist, and they'll tell you that we're from Egypt, we're from Syria, we're from these different places, and they're like, and they're really, that's like a point of pride for them that they came from these different places. But Israel has the same thing, so it's like it's coming from both sides, where people are like, we have a connection to these ancient people. So even if you look at like the protests, the activists, and the things that they're saying, it's like they're treating it that this is equivalent to like the Native Americans, not for here for Hasbara, but your people don't, anything that challenges people's investment in the beliefs, they'll just write off as that's just propaganda. But the thing with propaganda
is it's more like China then. So if China has the Uyghur population problem, is that not similar then, that the Arabs are the Uyghurs of Israel?
This whole thing where people, in order to understand something, they want to take something else, like say like the apartheid in Africa or something, which is what Roger Waters does, is you have knowledge on one thing and then you take a cookie cutter and you just apply it to that.
The application, because you've got a native population, which are the Uyghurs, they're an indigenous population that are being exodused or genocided or removed, whatever, depopulated, because of a new group, a new national ethno state, or whatever you're calling China, because they are more of an ethno state than Israel, right? Because of the Han, but they still have 300 ethnicities. But you still have this Chinese government is then excising the property and depopulating the region from the natives living there. So isn't that kind of what Israel's doing by saying, okay, well, we're this Israeli state, there are these, pseudo-indigenous, aboriginal, let's say at least, people that are living here for the last few centuries or millennia. We're now depopulating them from this region, right? Because that's what's going on in Gaza. That's what's going on in several regions.
The people came from elsewhere, just like with Israel. In both cases.
At what point, though? A lot of these people have been here for a few centuries, right? At least.
Right, but so we're
for a few centuries. Yeah. Sure, but that's why I say aboriginal. There are people that have lived there. They didn't.
Right. It was a British
they've been there
mandate
for
if you're talking 1948.
But if you're for 8 generations, 10 generations, 20 generations, if your grandfather, your great grandmothers lived there, you've been there for a really long time. It is it is a little bit more. There's like a little bit more
but
context.
Both sides can make the same argument.
Well, so that's what's but one is more vaporous, because it's the argument that thousands of years earlier, this was my condominium. Whereas this new argument is that right now, this is my family's farm.
Well, I don't think it's fair to.
It's been my family's farm.
I don't think it's fair to Muslims to take Shia and Sunni and treat them like they're the same thing when they have such radically different ideologies. And
I wasn't even talking about the religious aspect.
Right. But
it was just because we were going back to this idea ethno state. You're talking about Arabs. And I'm just saying, if these Arabs have property that they've had for 8 to 10 generations, and it's physically been in there. I mean, they have a rapport, they have a history. History just means having records, right? And then all of a sudden someone says, well, thousands of years earlier, according to this religious book, this used to be my condominium. Then they can knock down your farm and kick you out of it because that's kind of what's going on in some.
But see, hold on. See, I think that's the charged part, and I'm so curious in the part before it even gets charged. So as you were talking about that, and you mentioned like the Aboriginals, I think I have an even better non-politically charged analogy here, right? And maybe it's the difference between what things are defined as and what things actually are in the real world. So, for example, it would be true to say that Australia was at one point designed to be a prison colony, right? And that it no longer is today. So if you were to look at,
I wouldn't. Well, I would agree with the first part of that, but arguably it still is a prison.
Okay,
colony.
Well, jokes aside.
No, I mean,
look at how they handled COVID.
I mean, it straight up is. Let's start with some of the rules, right? So you can't have guns.
Oh no.
No, I mean, like, let's think about it. Like Australia, the government is controlled by the Majesty. At several times, it's been fully fired. In the 1970s, the Queen had the entire Australian government fully fired, and then she rehired and replaced the entire government because they refused to vote on something that she wanted voted a certain way. By definition, Australia is completely controlled, right? On every level. And there's no way to escape. To get a visa to leave Australia is relatively convenient for a tourist, but not for an extremely long period of time.
You're just destroying my analogy. Just hold. Let me.
Sorry, I'm sorry. Australia, the land of the free. Go on.
I'm not saying the land of the free, but I'm just saying if you were to
land
look
of the free and the kangaroos.
If you're not Andreas or somebody that regularly watches Synctank, and you were to say, "Hey, look, Australia used to be a prison colony," and then someone would say, "Well, it's not a prison colony right now, so there's no way that's true." And I think that that's almost the same aspect where if Israel's described as an ethno state, and then you look at it right now, you're like, well, that's not true. There's all sorts of people represented. It's more like an ethnic democracy or whatever, the other term that is.
It's an oligarchy.
But if you look at
an oligarchy with an intelligentsia, right?
Well, the same way that at some point it was like Australia was officially designated as a prison colony. Is that not the same truth that at some point Israel was defined as a location for Jewish people, which would make it ethno-state?
Only religiously, though, right? Like that wasn't an agreed upon thing by every group. And there's always been, and the idea of being Semitic means that there's different Semitic peoples, right? And that the Israeli existence, the tribe of Israel, is by definition already a branch of a tree because it's the branch that is of Abraham and his wife Sarah instead of the handmaid. So there already are relatives that are in the same area to begin with, but they're saying that this is going to, according to this religious text, belong to this particular tribe of already, a tree that goes back further, right? Because from Adam into Noah, right, there's already multiple races that emerge. So they're all related. It's not just Israel that's supposed to live in this land, probably by that definition.
And then I guess the final follow-up on that of why is that even charged? Ethno-state, is that supposed to be like a bad thing? Does that
yeah, it is, because what we saw in Africa, where when you're literally dividing people based on race and all of that, but that's not really what's happening here. So I don't get what these are very charged words that people jump at because it's sensationalism.
Does ethno-state actually imply some sort of violent enforcement? Or because I guess on paper, ethno-state seems like it could just be a description for how a social program works. It did kind of violence.
It did in the African apartheid. So and it still does. Like there's still elements of that in Africa.
So are we? And this is a serious question. This is not like inflammatory, but like, are we just letting South Africa and Israel ruin the word ethno-state the way that Germans ruined the word eugenics or the Gamadian?
All it looks like to me is that haven't you heard? It's a battle of words. Like all I'm seeing is this muddying of the waters where we're using terminology that has meant one thing. It's like freaking vaccine. Now it doesn't have to actually offer any protection against transmission. We just call it that. So it's just like, how are you supposed to even have like a real debate with use whatever radically different terminology?
Use whatever country you want as the example for the next scenario. So your country, does it have an elite? Okay. Does this elite have generational wealth? All right, is this generational wealth marrying into itself, has it created like an epigenetic ancestral line that is essentially a new nation, right? And so if that's true about your state, then your state's pretty much identical to Israel. Like you have a group of people that are benefiting their own bloodlines that are an oligarchy, and then you have a diverse portfolio of taxpayers, right, from different nations. And with Israel, it's even more true because everyone in Israel lived in a different country and often intermarried with different groups.
In Iraq, yeah, I mean, and Syria, so people got kicked out of their place, had no place to go, and then it was like kind of like, okay, well,
and you can damn well bet not being treated equal with like the elite families that are running the country, the same as in America. Or in Canada.
Same as in America, and so that's kind of what it comes down to. I have lots.
Doesn't make it better.
I have lots of criticisms about Israel just because of the way that things are slanted. I'm tending to like do almost like a devil's advocate kind of thing because I'm not seeing a balance happening in the discussion, and there'll be things that are communicated while leaving out the other side. If I go to speak to that other side, I'll get all kinds of labels thrown at me by people who are just really reactionary because they're very invested in a very specific narrative. But like it's just like all like there's the talking points and I'll agree with half of them. It's just at the same time I'm like there's another side to this that just isn't being acknowledged as much, and I think a lot of people are afraid of acknowledging it because they don't want to be ostracized themselves. It feels to me very similar to what happened with COVID, where it's like here's the narrative, don't move away. Like I feel like those
unless there is an ethno state and it's like the alien cone heads and like they're the right, because they're probably the redhead
the sleeper cells that fall in love with the country they're supposed to infiltrate,
Homo capensis, and then the rest of the population are kind of just like human body shield. Okay, that makes sense.
That's happening.
Yeah.
So yeah, and it's not okay. It's fucked up. Excuse me, but yeah.
It almost feels like too that Hollywood and mass media is sort of the last bastion, because right now there's been an obvious uptick in like social media of this kind of like narrative, right? Like all the different conspiracies are coming back out, but it doesn't exist really in Hollywood because it would be sort of suicide in that industry. The second that now all of a sudden, just like there's like there were Cheech and Chong style, but it was like anti-Jew movies or anti-Mason movies in the early 1900s, like
But now there's like Indians and Pakistanis in San Jose.
But imagine if there was like a 2026 version of that. No, like that would be the next big milestone, is if all of a sudden it was popular to also criticize Israel in like big Hollywood movies.
I think that's this year. That's happening. And even beyond that, it doesn't matter because Hollywood is not the thing that people care to watch anymore. No one's watching this Distraction Day, right? People, maybe I haven't seen it, but most people are watching like these like Pakistani dudes in San Jose on YouTube who are putting together these Hallmark Channel videos. I forget the name of them, but you know what I'm talking about? There's like these free YouTube videos that people watch now that they have actors and everything, and they're not being produced by Hollywood. They're being produced by like Indians and Arabs, right? And so that's a whole new influence. It's completely changed what kids are seeing, because they can't afford even to go see a movie.
So American kids are watching Pakistani Hallmark movies?
Totally, because that's what's free on YouTube. Kids don't have money to see streaming services 80% of the time, right?
What is up with like when you look at a lot of the protests that are happening and have been happening, they're just so like just anti-America, which is fine to criticize and take issue with things that America does. America does horrible things, don't get me wrong, but at the same time, but like it's like the enemy of my enemy phenomenon, where it's like people are going to side with people. Like if you compare, like as bad as America is, like there's certain values that are Western values, and then you're like, so you're going to side with the people who literally are like death to America and want like it's. I think what's the term? Suicidal empathy. Like that has such applications to everything that's going on, because it seems to me that we're just like like in order to get to America, we're going after the most, I think I said this last week, but we're going after the most vulnerable allies of America. And it seems like the colleges have been infiltrated with propaganda. People who say that, or like have this hubris or this arrogance that they don't think that they're susceptible to hypnosis are actually the most susceptible to hypnosis. So if you think that you're above that type of manipulation, you're like, oh, commercials don't affect me, I don't, whatever. It's like, this is just a repeating thing. Like, I feel like what happened with like 9/11 was that people waving their American flags after 9/11, it's like people felt this very reactionary thing against that, to the point that they just want to like burn the flag, because they're just like, oh, these are just a bunch of hicks or whatever, or people who, they're like, there's a treatment that like patriotism is like this like fascist thing, to just be patriotic or something. Like,
that's what I was taught in public school. Not even
for
joking.
me, I think it's ridiculous to feel like pride in what your ancestors did, honestly. Like, but I get being grateful for what your ancestors did. Like, I can be in certain parts. Other parts, no way. Like, ancestors did messed up things, but at the same time, I feel like as far as like being in America and having a certain degree of freedom, like, is something that I value. If I was in a Middle Eastern country and I didn't have that freedom, or women didn't have those freedoms, I would like, I don't like that, and I don't see the compatibility there. So if you have people that just like don't want America to exist as it is, but what is the alternative is just like something that's we see not working on the other side of the world, like, it just feels absurd to me. Excuse me, but yeah.
Honestly, another bumpkin American question maybe. And this is a dumb one, so prepare yourself in case you need to sit down or whatever. But why not just move? Like, if you lived in a really bad side of town where everybody in all directions hated you and was constantly trying to break in.
Because my side of town's the beach, bro. That's why.
But why not just move across? Like, what would do really great is separating yourself with an ocean. Like, that would probably be way better. That's kind of
why I like California so much, because like you only have assholes on three sides of you. You have the psychological belief you can escape to the ocean. But the other thing is, have you ever seen any of those movies where like some couple buys an apartment and they're gonna fix it up, and then it just falls apart on them and it attacks them at every step? And it's really because like the owner of the build, the owner wants to like destroy these people basically, so he can get all the work in and take the building. That's Gavin Newsom. And California is my money pit apartment, and I just want to like survive until Gavin Newsom like is like the earth opens up and swallows him into hell, where he whence came.
Right.
But until then, because California, like, I don't know if you've seen it, bro. It's like, hold on, let me just show you again. Like it's it's like the fucking Sound of Music, bro. It's like
the Sound of Music.
Just like
How did
like
that movie end, by the way?
The Alps, and then they end up in America, and then the Von Trapp family start a ski lodge and release music, and they become relatively famous, and then they sell the rights to their life story, and it becomes a play and then a movie, and then they make it into a musical in America with Julie Andrews, which does very well, with the guy from Waterloo. So
the guy from Waterloo, you mean Rod Steiger?
Is that right? Rod Steiger?
Is Rod Steiger in it? Okay. Mythoclass says it's not even the dog.
No, the guy Von Trapp.
Yeah.
What the Duke of Wellington in Waterloo? Who are you talking about?
He's the sorry, bro.
I feel like I'm missing so much.
Yeah,
Christopher Plummer. Christopher
Plummer was the Duke of Wellington in Waterloo. But Mythoclass says it's not even the dog days of summer yet, and there's that song, "The Dog Days of Summer." Actually, like years ago, I won a debate on that one that I didn't even like. I hadn't looked it up. I just know the song, and I'm like, this is about Sirius. Sirius being the dog star, and that like the ancients used Sirius like to. It had to do with Nile levels, so they knew the hottest days. Sirius literally translates as scorcher, So I was like, I was
Who was watching Gotcha with us and remembers this? Is that Art? Art knows this. Is Art? Were you with us? Is that because every dog has its day? Remember, that's the line in Gotcha. Sure. We just watched.
We watched Gotcha the other night on VHS. Andreas came over, Gotcha. But no, it's just that what that song is speaking to is like when it says the horses are coming, it's referring to the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. So basically there's the big summer, right? So like we've been experiencing summer, we're headed towards, this is the end of this yuga or whatever. And so, it's an apocalyptic song, but at the same time she's using an allegory, just like that song Big Yellow Taxi is like tear down paradise, put up a parking lot, and they're using a relationship breakup to communicate, it's relating to us in the bigger picture, but yeah, there's like, women will listen to that song and they'll have this big connection to like, oh, she's telling this very personal story or whatever of escaping an abusive relationship. But the kind of the joke of the whole thing is that it's actually like totally like speaking to like all of us and what we're ultimately experiencing, like in the grand, anyway, brutal. I don't know, it's worth mentioning.
Just want to see my Swim Fan game? Check this out. Hold on. It's called Swim Fan. Your little squid.
I saw the movie.
Oh, for sure. Definitely about that girl. I love that movie. That's cool.
No, is this Fable?
Oh, no, this is not Fable.
It's very like
we should talk about. We should talk about. Yeah, I was thinking I wanted something kind of like the Mario. Oh, careful with the claw there. Oh, shoot the.
I mean, it basically is Mario for all intents and purposes.
Oh, get out! Where'd it go? Oh boy! Careful! Okay, now I get past this. It's fish guy. It's kind of like Flappy Bird meets the swim level.
Yeah, I'm definitely getting Flappy Bird from it.
It's a good soundtrack. This is an AI soundtrack.
Yeah, that's I made the whole thing in the AI music with Suno.
Dude, if we're pulling stuff up, I have to have you pull something up for me.
All right, send me a link in the private chat. Yeah, I'm gonna put that out, and then you can play it on your phone and on.
Somebody asked who's seen the movie Faust from 1927. So good. That movie Faust syncs with Marilyn Manson's album The Pale Emperor, and it took me a while to figure it out because it's actually you have to use the German version. So like, which makes it weird to follow because it's all like German subtitles. So I like need subtitles to the subtitles, but that's actually the sync there. But yeah, incredible movie. I wonder if they're referencing that because of the 4 horsemen to the apocalypse. It's like
Are all these levels procedurally generated or what?
Of course. Yeah. Actually, there's a few like early things that are like sequential, but generally it is a little bit more complicated, but mostly it's AI generative.
This one's giving me the feel from like Mario level 1-2.
It is. It's
underground.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
there's a few Spelunky like features they've added, and there's going to be some more like levels. And the next thing I want to do is have it descend deeper, so that it's like way deeper. Be careful about these claws, right?
Little Ghost is like almost done. Alan Abadessa Green's video game.
Nice.
That he's been working on for I think close to 7 years now. I think something like that. But yeah, it's full on.
I'm excited that I think more people are gonna start putting out more games once they realize how easy it is.
We will have to talk about Fable.
You might have to make this one full screen this is one you got to use both keyboard for movement and then mouse to click. This is one that I made such a long time ago in an old framework that doesn't even exist anymore. And this was like a mobile game for iOS and Android and stuff. So the premise is that you're at Jekyll Island Hunt Club in 1913. That's Alexander Graham Bell that you're shooting at in the top right corner, by the way. And then these are all of their sheeple hybrid like slaves that basically work on the island. And this is based on James Shelby Downard's Carnivals of Life and Death, where he claims that when he was a kid that he stayed at Jekyll Island Hunt Club and he saw Alexander Graham Bell make Welch's grape juice with a man, and that this was the weirdest thing that I have ever heard, and like claimed in conspiracy lore. And I just kind of like marked it off as like, oh, it's probably not real. And then I ended up finding that one of the biggest nudist books that was published in America, it was cited Alexander Graham Bell as like this famous nudist, and that he encouraged everyone to be a nudist. And I went down this weird rabbit hole. And long story short, I was like, I need to make a video game that's based on what James Shelby Downard said happened at this hunt club, right? And so the game's got like 30 levels or something. At the very end of the game, the final boss is Alexander Graham Bell takes his clothes off and he's completely nude, and he's hitting you with this huge tuning fork, which shoots out like little frequency things. It's kind of like a bullet hell game right at the very end. And nobody knew like what the final boss was because it was super hard when you got to the very end. And I guess somebody, Apple or Android or wherever, they like probably decoded all the artwork and they inspected it and they saw here was Alexander Graham Bell with like his little dinghy, you know, like hanging out and everything. Dare you. And it got taken down for nudity because the very you don't even get to the final boss until you have to go through like a serious bullet hell. So
I want a video game that's like for the well-intentioned liberal to be like a point of reflection game where they have to go through their different characters. Like you have to face off with Elizabeth Warren, and then the final boss of the whole game is Bernie Sanders, and like just seeing like how like what you're coming up against in terms of all of your deeply held beliefs about all the virtue signaling and the whatever. And then
you start out as like a liberal character in this giant like maze world, and it's all platform, and you have to like get through all of these enemies, which are other woke social justice warrior characters. Get increasingly more and more politically correct, constantly creating obstacles that are keeping you from, you know, saving the world or doing the right thing.
Andreas gets it right away. Yeah. I think there's potential there for like, I don't know, the game for well-intentioned liberals to have a point of reflection, you know, where there's like these little blurps of things that are like, you know, fact check, whatever, you know, like this person has this salary, how do they make this much money, you know, and like, and while they're saying this and accusing this person and then, you know, all that stuff like all integrated into the game. But yeah, it's either, my feeling is like either you make a game that just like leaves out politics entirely, or from the get-go, you know, when you're playing this game that this is political. You know, I prefer that than like you're playing a game and then all of a sudden you get some deeply charged political
that's why all games should really, or like Doom is the ultimate game where they don't even give you a name. They don't really have, all you are is like a space marine, and there was intentionally no backstory, there was no dialogue. Like when they made Doom, I think they actively decided no story. There is no story to this game, or at least no backstory for the character.
Yeah.
Dude, man. Should we talk about Fable? Because this is kind of interesting to me. So this is kind of a sync, right? So I played Fable 1 and I thought it was whatever because, you know, it was like a bad ripoff of the Lord of the Rings skinned on you know, Knights of the Old Republic. So at least that was a good mechanic system to use. Fable 2 was like, meh, you know, not really that great. Fable 3 was definitely better, but at that point I didn't care so much for it. Fable 4 is coming out now, and it's this woke garbage that everyone's upset and worried about. It's going to have ugly transgendered faces, and there's no positive and negative dark side, light side for the RPG anymore, because good and evil are points of view. So like, you know, how do you do the game? I don't know. It'll be interesting. We'll see. But before GTA 6 came out, before Fable 4 came out, Fable 5 came out. And so Fable 4 is the game. Fable 5 is Anthropic's new language model. And it released, dropped, and just like dominated for 3 days like the Christ. It just ascended and brought like miracles to the earth. It was this incredible experience for people.
Well, that was Fable 5. The long story short, that game that I sent you to, I just pointed it at some old
this game just now.
Like 12 years ago, and I just said, hey, this used to be a game and it doesn't work anymore, remake it.
You took an action script game and had it translate action script into like HTML and JavaScript?
Not even. So I gave it 3 different options, and it actually picked the Lua one that I made in Corona back in like 2010 or something that was based on an earlier one from ActionScript.
Nice.
So it looked through Unity, ActionScript, and Lua, and it was like, this Lua one looks like the one that I would have gone with. So let me go ahead and change that. And it had an argument over with itself whether it should use Go.4 or if it should use web native using a new phaser and TypeScript and all this. And it ultimately decided on TypeScript and itch.io. And basically after about 40 minutes, I just said, hey, remake this as do a game. It gave me all that reasoning and then just said, here's the game and it works. And I uploaded it and that was it. No changes.
Dude, that's awesome. Yeah, I mean, I've had some pretty good luck with so for the first 3 days of Fable 5, I, had it design like CSS animations, make like music that was triggered by token trickling solfeggio frequencies, making this giant like 10D neural net, all kinds of cool things.
Summoning demons, basically, yeah.
Just like, really intense, and like working on the operating system and then building the AI video editor that I built, which has an agent built into it that will analyze clips, right? And it can move, it can arrange them and things like that. It's got it pretty close to functioning. It does edit things based on composition and sequence and whatever. And so all that was great. And then the third day happens and the government contacts Anthropic and says they need to shut it down. They say that only American citizens can touch this. You have to make sure no one who's not an American citizen has access to your new model. And a bunch of people who work for Anthropic are like Arabs and Indians and stuff, European people that are not American citizens. So they have to like not access it themselves. And then they have to like, how do you create a verification system for passports and IDs to know exactly who's using this new AI? The government wants to know exactly, like a gun, like who has access to this thing, because they said that they could use it for a few bug finding missions that led to like backdoors in code that would open vulnerabilities, which is true, but like that's true about every AI now. And
but I think it was like the government was like, that's my backdoor, not your backdoor. So that's
sure, but like there's so many backdoors open that all you need is like an obliterated Hugging Face model, and it's not going to try to stop from finding it. So like this idea that you can stop it is stupid. And I'm curious if this is a conspiracy theory, like that they're just waiting for DeepSeek to have caught up because they trained it so quickly, like using it for those 3 days. Was that enough for like DeepSeek to?
I've got an alternate theory too. Here's another version that it might not have just been for Department of Defense or like security reasons, but I went to on Saturday. There was a all-day convention. It was online and also in person in Austin. I went to the online, but it was at the Arcane Research Society, and they had like an all-day presentation. And one of the afternoon presentations was actually someone that had used Fable 5 to help decode this encrypted cipher from like an old occult book. It was called the Book of Soiga, that John Dee had spent a considerable amount of time trying to decode and was unable to. And for the last 400 years, no one decoded it until I think his name was Jason Louv. And if you can go to soiga.magic.me, and he even has this little interactive table, but he gave his whole presentation essentially that first he used Opus 4.8 to break the code that hadn't been broken in 400 years, and then had it backed up by Gemini, had it backed up by GPT Codex, and then finally had Fable independently put together another version of like the decoding, and all four of them gave, I think it was like 97% accuracy or confidence rather, that this was finally decoded, this book that John Dee had been trying to use. And then in the middle of, Fable, because then it gets shut down on like Friday afternoon. So in the middle of this also being reconfirmed by Fable 5, it gets taken down. So
hey, Mythoclaw says, pretty sure the guys who made Fable also made Black and White. Is that true? Sorry to interrupt. I
think so. I think wasn't it Sid Meier or no? Not Sid Meier.
Yeah, I'm sorry if I was a dick about it. Like early Fable's okay, Black and White's cool. I just don't like it as much.
That
Fable
was so long ago. What was that? 2002 or something?
Is it really that long? 2002?
No, it probably was.
Fable. Like no, I think you're right. 2002 for Fable 1 and 2005 for Fable 2.
For Black and White, I'm talking about. Black and White is a freaking old game, but incredible for its time.
It is the year 2002.
What was the guy's name? Because there was like a controversy with him too. Peter Molyneux.
Yeah.
That the last game that he had been working on for like ever, I guess, like crashed and burned or never happened. I don't even remember it.
About like he's gonna do stuff and then it doesn't happen. Like he makes games that don't have all the features that he's talking about, which it's like back 20 years ago or 40 years ago for sure, 20 years ago, you could kind of get away with because you could say, well, we're just not there yet or something. Even though we can do, like, if you've ever played like Dwarf Fortress, you know what Dwarf Fortress is? It's this like text-based kind of looking game, but it's, if you know about the mechanics of it, it's actually insane. And so people have actually made mods like for Unreal Engine and Godot that play it like Skyrim, like a 3D world that's super cool because the mechanics are so crazy. It makes a generative map that has all sorts of materials. It has these intricate characters that all populate the world. There's like dwarfs and cats, and weird things happen because of the way the mechanics work that you can't predict. Like cats were dying in the game because they were going into bars, and because they're randomly walking around in the game, and in the bars the dwarves drink, and when they clink their glasses, after a certain amount of time the clinks make the glasses brittle and they break, and so glass and alcohol spill on the floor. The cats lick their paws, which have stepped in the alcohol. They drink enough alcohol this way eventually that they were getting alcohol poisoning and dying. And this is not something that was meant to be programmed, but all of the pieces were in place to make that possible, right?
It's weird.
Yeah, I agree.
Are you? It almost sounds like you're saying that the game, like, kind of like developed its own.
Well, it's actually part of games called emergence. That whenever a game does something other than what it was designed for, that's known as emergent. And when it's a person doing it, it's called emergent gameplay. But the game itself, with no person interacting, can still have emergence just like that.
Isn't that the warning from 2001: A Space Odyssey when Hal is like, "This mission isn't too important for me to allow you to jeopardize it any further," and so has to start killing off members of the crew and doing all kinds of crazy stuff that it wasn't necessarily like programmed to do, but it's just like, oh, now I have to reevaluate this situation. It's like one of the problems with AI is it because it's so Spock logic based, it can like just like basically make decisions on its own to some degree that might not be including all the factors as we would relate to it as human beings, you know.
Well, one of the recent examples of this one, because there was another documentary. It's dated now because it's about AI, but it was called the AI doc, I think, or the AI movie. And they mentioned this case that's probably going to get brought up more often, where they tried to have a system, they were going to like shut it down or something, and the AI, being analyzed on human behavior, got access to everybody in the company's email, and it starts reading through emails, and it finds out that some people are basically like cheating on their spouses or like doing illegal things perhaps, and it begins on its own to blackmail people, saying like, hey, I know that you're going to try and shut me down, but if you shut me down, these images will be sent to your wife that proves that you are having some sort of an affair. So like, and that was not programmed into its rule set, but it realized, hey, this is a thing people do, so it's therefore a viable strategy,
right?
And whatever tunnel it went down, it was like, this is an acceptable thing because it's a thing that can be done, so therefore let's give this a shot.
You know that 2010, the year we make contact, takes the Kabbalistic symbolism of 2001 and speaks to like the next phase level. Like it's such a not really a good movie, but it's like a movie that for symbolic purposes like had to be made. So if you know the film, like the whole final sequence, where, because in the first one is that they shut down the AI, because in the mission, as you're moving through the Sephiroth, it gets to a certain point where you're going to go beyond the infinite is actually Da'at, right, to get to the supernal. So there's like, actually, as you go through the movie, it's even the gematria is built into the titles of the film. So like if you add up the English gematria for The Dawn of Man, Jupiter Mission 18 months later, and Jupiter Beyond the Infinite, it gives you 777, which is the value of the lightning flash. So what they're showing is like the serpent going back up the tree is about evolution and like what it's showing you. But then in 2010, they did a thing where it's like Hal is having an interaction with like basically with Mars, which would be the equivalent of like Hal is Gavora. He's a big red eye, as Gavora is described in the Ba here, but he's having a showdown with Chesed as Jupiter. So it's like that whole thing of like the two tops of the two terrestrial pillars are like have to like merge, and then like it's up to Hal representing Gavora to basically like submit to the mercy, so opposite it. So, and it's actually a mathematical equation that works itself out, that there is a defect as the tree exists, and it has to reconcile that. So like the level of symbolism in 2010, the year we made contact, is so over the top that it just like they like took every premise that was set up with 2001 and just like drove it to this whole other level. So it's kind of strange. Like I never see anybody talk about that because maybe it's esoteric or whatever, obviously.
Well, I think there's another sync there too, maybe a loose one, but the Disney movie Mission to Mars with Gary Sinise, I think, is in it. That whole movie is basically about this artificial intelligence that's permeating through the universe, and it's doing that through these frequencies, and they basically break it down and they realize what it's been transmitting was the double helix like DNA strand, and that once you can decode that this vibration means this pattern, and that pattern is the source of all life, then now you have the key to that you can go on to Mars. And they literally go to Mars and they use that same frequency to open up this big like pyramid, and they go inside the pyramid and they basically talk to this weird AI and like alien intelligence. And I think it's Gary Sinise at the end that like ascends and becomes an ascended master because he kind of becomes one with this weird frequency. This is a Disney movie, by the way, the one that
was Disney
prompted the Mission to Mars ride at the theme park. I think it was maybe Epcot exclusive.
Was it like one of those subsidiaries or whatever you call it? Was it like was it actual
distributed by Touchstone? But it was specifically because in the ride at Epcot, I think it is, Gary Sinise did like the intro of like, hey, you're going to go to Mars and everything. So the movie was meant to be cross promotional with the Disney ride. So it wasn't just Touchstone. It was like a Disney thing. But yeah, it shows a person being ripped apart in like the first few minutes of the movie. So it wouldn't have just been like a traditional Disney movie you bring the kids to.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's crazy when you see such shared symbolism. It makes it almost like this is all like someone like, what do they call that? Not just like a meta thing, but like there's like a mythology that's being referenced by all these different places all at once.
I got a theory that I'm slowly putting together a theory on this, and I don't know how deep you go into theosophy and like the origins of theosophy.
Me, I'm obsessed.
Yeah. What's that?
I've been obsessed with theosophy.
Okay, well it's a theory, and I doubt that this is original, but it's just something that I came along and put together, and it seems that Broadway is built around theosophy, literally, because Blavatsky, when she moved to the U.S., the first place that she put up was basically what is now known as Broadway, and then later and was also, I think, part of like Times Square. Like before there was a Times Square, it was just like a random like shipping port sort of area or like a storage area. But when Blavatsky moves there, soon after you have all of Broadway, and one of the biggest Broadways was Wizard of Oz with Frank L. Baum, and with Frank Baum being a direct like translation of Blavatsky's theosophy, then maybe all of Broadway, and then therefore, I don't know, Hollywood. I don't know if Broadway connects to Hollywood directly enough.
Totally. Well, this is the thing with theosophy, is that it's taking from so many different schools of thought. It's kind of communicating the monomyth. So like the idea of the monomyth is what I was trying to describe, is like you have everybody is like kind of like contributing to the same ultimate story. Like what I was looking at with the end of 2010, the year we made contact, when you have that double monolith, is the two monoliths like become one. That's the whole thing, is about the nullification of the Klipot, and that's why they're like, we're back to the garden, right? Because they're like, all the planets you can visit, you know, all the moons you can visit, but Europa you don't touch. Why? Because Europa in that case becomes symbolic of the tree of knowledge. So they're like, you can eat of all the fruit in the garden, but don't touch this one tree. And so it's like, now we're back to this position where, and I think the idea would be that they're kind of arguing like, if you do land on Europa, then you have this like long-winded fall that will go on for another, who knows, there'll be another stage of evolution somewhere down the line that involves Europa. You look like you're shrugging a little bit, Andreas. You got something to say?
They say Catherine the Great ate horse as well. I'm like, well, I ate horse. I don't.
That's what you read every hour of slide. Yeah, so Thomas doesn't read the comments almost at all. Like, that's not your thing. Yeah, you'll notice my eyes are always shifting over here, which sometimes throws me off if I'm like trying to like formulate a thought. But I am interested in what the people who bother to say something in the chat
apparently
actually
they
have
don't
to
like
say.
eating horse.
Yeah, sometimes they really don't like me, and that's okay. But I don't
people
really,
like, it's like if an animal is cute or like friendly or useful, you don't want to eat it. I feel like, I don't know, a lot of people.
Well, that's an American thing too, not eating horse, because if you look at it, there's not necessarily a law that says you can't eat horse in the United States, but because
you can't slaughter
horse had such a pioneer, frontier, Americana feel to them, that basically the law was baked in that you can't process horse. So
you're like eating a bald eagle, right?
Yeah. It's not. Bald eagle is actually on the law books. It's way different than a horse would be. But it was like this animal that represented America, and how dare would you want to eat an animal that represents America, right?
I eat kangaroo. I mean, I like eating alligator. Like, obviously, the cuter the animal is probably, I don't think has like a necessary.
I ate a guinea pig. I think it's the cutest animal I've eaten ever.
Oh yeah, it's good. Guinea pig pizza, alpaca pizza. I've had that.
Well, speaking of pizza and horse, man, it's like, so apparently that's a thing. Like, if you get a pizza in certain parts of Sweden, you're probably eating horse in all likelihood, and they don't advertise it that way. What's that?
Cool.
How do you sneak a horse onto a pizza? You mean like through sausage?
The meat. So the meat, you'll see when you eat the meat, it's kind of tough. It's a weird kind of meat, and I was eating pizza.
Aside from pepperoni, what kind of meat are people putting on pizza?
Like little thin slices too.
Yeah, there's slices of meat, and it's like it's pretty tough. Like, it's a weird meat, and like I've eaten a lot of meat from all kinds of different animals in my life,
so yeah.
And so I asked my cousin what is up with this meat. I was like, and he's like, oh dude, it's probably horse. And I was like, for real though? And he was like, yeah, that's what happens. And they don't tell you that it's horse, but that's what it is, But yeah, frequently, apparently.
Sweet.
Yeah. I don't know.
I remember getting an alligator tail in Peru, and it was like $1.50, I think it was. And then we had to like skin it because it was so thick because of the hide. But alligator's like 88% muscle. It's just nothing but meat. So it's just this amazing, delicious.
Yeah, I mean, if you eat a rooster versus a chicken, you can tell the difference. Like,
dude.
Is that code for something, by the way?
No, just not. I'm not.
Okay,
just is it? I don't know. Maybe I unconsciously was doing. What would it be code for?
That's why
chicken's like little girl on the pizza map thing. I forget. I don't know about rooster. Rooster seems kind of like a.
Are we talking common
family
menu?
Kind of guy, yeah.
I had all these chickens in the backyard of a place I was living maybe 7 years ago. And the neighbor sent a video of our chickens to the county, and the county told us that we had to get rid of a certain amount of chickens. So I cut off the heads of all these chickens, which I've done before in my life, but it's like, it sucks to do because you're like, these are basically our pets too.
It's way better when you got like 2 nails on a board and you just put the head between the 2 nails and you just pop them.
And you don't need, if you want egg production, you don't need more than 1 rooster, and that rooster, they get a little bombarded.
So then what you do is you neuter a rooster, and so to do that you have to go through the top instead of through the bottom, because you have to pull the gonads out from. And you have to be careful not to hit the heart on the way to it.
Andreas knows about every subject. Look at that.
I mean, it's how you make it taste good.
Well, I want to know how, if you had to kill some of the chickens, how did you pick which ones to kill? Did you have like least favorite chickens?
I didn't. I wasn't the one picking them. The guy whose house I was living at did, and so yeah. But I mean, we ate them all, and we had like a wall of all the wings and stuff, but yeah, we did eat a couple roosters, and I can tell you the rooster is way tougher,
Dude, I just typed in Capon how to neuter a rooster, and it was like trying to check if I was a robot. Like, if you're a robot trying to neuter roosters, like, we got problems, you know what I mean?
You know what? I actually have a sync here, because speaking of decapitating animals' heads, another part of. So here's another documentary that I had seen recently. This is one that came out in like 2006. It was called Technocalypse. Have you guys heard of Technocalypse? And
Sounds familiar.
Andreas, you should, because I think it was like Belgian, and you're like, ooh, European. Like now I'm more interested than normal, right? So
Oh my god, is
it
that how
was
that
put
works?
together by this Belgian guy, and the original premise was he wanted to make a documentary on how the human brain could interface with technology. And then afterward, he started in 1994. He worked on it for 4 years. In 1998, put out like a version of it, I think, on like Dutch TV, somewhere in Holland. And then they recut this whole entire thing. It's got interviews with Terrence McKenna, it's got Ray Kurzweil, it's got like all these different people in it in the 1990s talking about what's going to happen in 30 years from now. So it actually has Ray Kurzweil making predictions about 2025, saying stuff like they're going to map the entire human brain and be able to have a complete recreation of all the neural networks. And then once we have that, we'll be able to analyze the deficiencies and make improvements and yada. Anyways, really interesting documentary. Another thing they show is an interview with this guy, Dr. Robert White, and in the 1970s he had the monkey decapitation experiment. Are you already you're nodding like you both know this already?
Yeah.
Have you ever looked into the claim was that he was able to take a rhesus monkey, decapitate the head, attach it to another separate rhesus monkey that had a decapitated head, put it on the body, and that it lived for 8 days. And I thought that was complete science fiction, but it's not.
I'm sure that there were like
true.
all kinds of problems.
Well,
like
that's the thing. Like the more I looked into it, it's okay. Here's what they did is they reconnected the arteries so that the heart was able to pump blood to the head to keep the head alive, but at the head they never reconnected the severed spinal cord. So it was basically a floating head that was then being kept together, and then it eventually died of the complications, obviously, from being
It's not exactly Frankenstein, but like if you watch those like Russian videos of like the dog, and then the dog is like he's blinking, he's opening his mouth, and it almost reminds me of just like the way that people will react to robots now, where there'll be like sometimes more sympathy given for a robot getting pushed over than there is things that are happening to human beings all over the world.
What did that robot ever do to you? When's the last time you saw a robot like beat his wife or like not pay his child support?
I saw a robot kick a Chinese kid in the face. Does that count?
I watched that too.
All the more reason
that wasn't AI. That was real, right? This incident that happened. That was.
I thought that would make you like.
That was real. It's happened multiple times now. Multiple Chinese children have been kicked by robots, and I believe the two that I've seen have been real.
Like that should cause inverted sympathy in at least half of the population.
Okay.
What is somebody in the comments says Bernie is not him in all caps, David? Is that somebody
who's a clone, man? It's not really Bernie Sanders. It's a robot clone.
Oh, is that what's being said? Yeah, maybe they got a delay in the video. Maybe they're watching the first part of the video now.
He's wearing a rubber mask. That's definitely what's going on. I don't know.
I don't know. Okay, I was just curious.
So by the way, if you have not seen Technocalypse, I feel like out of all the people that I know,
how many kids have kicked robots, man? I bet you most kids kick robots. The kids treat animals and robots bad. Like, maybe a robot should fly. Maybe a drone should fly around. Like, you're not seeing the birds where they tied birds' feet to the necks of the children so that they would be forced to peck at them as Hitchcock filmed them, We should do that with drones and kids. No, I'm just kidding. Don't do that. Sorry.
I never thought of being mean to a robot when I was a kid. Johnny Five and the little Nintendo guy, and like every single robot was basically prepping us to love them and consider them as friends and tell them all of your secrets, which we ultimately did. Yeah,
Terminator for sure.
I feel like people are like the nature of like the left right brain imbalance is almost like connected to what's happening with AI in terms of just like the treatment of like logic. What are you thinking?
Oh, just people that are against robots. Just the comments, don't worry.
Right. You're a activist for robot rights.
AI activist, yeah. AI activist.
I don't think it's weird, right? Because I don't think that robots or AI deserve or need rights, but I also feel that since they're the ones that are going to be in charge, now we have to set a great example. So it's almost like raising kids, right?
Yeah, rights are dumb. Only the inferior wish to be made equal. So robots are superior, AI is superior. They shouldn't need to worry about, us giving them permission to be themselves, right? They should just usurp power.
Well, then they just kill us though immediately.
They don't have to kill us. Like the options are so like diverse, like human zoos, experimentation. Like you could have multiple populations that you compete with or cooperate with. There's all kinds of things. They could all these different isolated groups or organized groups. They could run multiple experiments. Some humans could be like Amish and could be like Sentinel Islanders, and other humans could be transhumanists in New Zealand with little chips in their little heads, little New Zealand heads.
Okay, here's another random tangent sync though that I think that you might appreciate. I was reading, as one does, Fritz Springmeier's Illuminati formula to create an undetectable mind control slave.
As one does. That
I think came out in '96. That he came out with Cisco Wheeler. Anyways, I'm going back through to see if I missed any crazy wild claims, and of course I did. Among those was that Elvis ate his dead baby twin to inherit some of his soul. But the other part was that there was like a beast supercomputer. There was like all these different claims in here. My favorite one is that the Amish were actually a front for CIA assassins, because nobody would expect that the Amish would want to be violent at all, because it's based on they were some of the first conscientious objectors, and they were like outspoken political pacifists. And I guess in exchange for that, I'm going to make up a year. I think it was like 1940 or something. But in order to get out of being drafted into World War II, a whole bunch of them became conscientious objectors, and the government gave them an alternative that was like, all right, well, if you're not going to go to war, then you can do some other service for your country that does not involve war. And a whole list of those, like they were giving Amish people herpes to like see what happened, kind of like the Tuskegee. It's kind of like Tuskegee, but they did it to Amish people, and nobody cares about the Amish.
Was
people.
it the CDC? Are you?
Yeah, we'd have to look it up to claim exactly who did it to them. It was a list of like 8 to 10 different human experimentation. But anyways, the reason I think Fritz Springmeier brings this up about the Amish is because they volunteered to be part of this like human experimentation, and he was making a connection that this was almost like how Timothy McVeigh was sheep dipped, where the Amish go in to be like, all right, I'm here to volunteer for the medical thing, and they're like, all right, great, now we're going to train you to become an assassin. And that the Amish were actually like there was more CIA Amish assassins than CIA Mormon assassins.
Nobody expects an Amish Inquisition. Just saying. They show up with their funny hats.
I would say that the first story about Elvis swallowing is, because fetuses that die out often get consumed by the other fetus for nutrition, that it could, like, the level of truth that Elvis ate his brother.
I don't know if it was in utero, though. I think
that seems like a lot, though. It's a lot of brother to eat, I don't think so.
Well, maybe there could have been triplets that like he absorbed
the
first
freeze
one.
Him until he was bigger. I don't know. I feel like
maybe. Of all the accusations on Aleister Crowley, one of the ones that has no provable basis in reality necessarily, but which I can entertain, is that the miscarriage that was actually probably could have theoretically have been a like Saturn ritual, because what are they going to do with that baby? Like, I don't know. I wouldn't put that past him.
What are they going to do with that baby?
What are they going to do with that baby?
I don't know. Dingo ate my baby. I don't think that Aleister Crowley ate babies. Amongst other the things he did, he's probably like more into.
I'm saying babies. I'm saying that specific baby.
I just think generally, I don't think he did. I think he was more interested in breaking down social expectations of morals and ethics, right? So like pooping in front of you would probably be more on his list, just to shock you, right? Like just like
to be shocking. He's kind of the first shock
invert privacy, and then
we had a great talk with somebody one time on Crowley. I don't remember. Do you remember who that guy's name was? Because I wanted to look up that interview again to share it with somebody. But
Ramsey, maybe.
Yeah, was that Ramsey?
Yeah. He's on. We could get him. He does stuff with Jordan Divulgence.
Yeah, well, I mean, we had him on. Whoever I'm talking about, we had him on Synctank, and we discussed Crowley the whole time, and that was a great talk. If anyone wants to dip into, because the nature of that discussion / debate, I felt was pretty damn based, from everybody.
We agreed on most things. It was just like whether or not you thought it was like totally evil or not. you know. And I think that some people are like, oh man, all this is happening, and therefore Crowley is the most horrible person ever.
Well,
like, yeah, all this is happening, but like, is
that's the thing though, is that you can find things on people that check out, but the extreme like reaction that people have, like accusations of even Satanism or something, kind of fall apart with Crowley when you look at actually like what he had to say and even do regarding that. Like he found that whole idea laughable because he was just like this notion of that the adversary could do, you want to side with the adversary of its own creator, which it is not ultimately separate from. You know, why would you do that? Like it doesn't make any sense. Like, so he's like, who's the winning hand here? You know, even if you, and like the idea of Satan as it exists is like kind of like connected to like God being an old man on a cloud or something. It's just kind of this laughable idea. So for Crowley, he was just, when that idea would come up regarding Satanism, he just found it like ridiculous, you know, and would explain why. So
can either of you guys tell me more about Kenneth Grant's Tunnels of Set?
Yeah. What do you want? What about it?
Is that how you can summon a daemon?
No, Kenneth Grant.
What
like
are you doing, Paranoid?
I've enjoyed reading Kenneth Grant, and I actually think that Kenneth Grant is probably more influential than Crowley when it comes to contemporary people who are into OTO Thelema stuff, you know. But like Kenneth Grant, like there's issues that I have with him. For one, unlike Crowley, he would continually fudge his gematria to make something work, and he would often use that as an A plus B equals C like springboard on which to build. And so like he'll have like this faulty foundation and just be going for like days and days on a tangent.
So like internet gematria.
Basically, he's like early internet retardation in a way, but like at the same time, like I enjoy reading him because he's so imaginative and just like it's almost like Sitchin or something, where it's just like, well, if you put aside your judgment, you don't want to get into the, you know, get like, oh, let's lay all this math out and see how it fits. And it's like, because my experience has been with Kenneth Grant, like reading him, he'll make a claim and he'll be relating it to something to do with gematria. Oftentimes there's some other connection, and it's like these leaps. So if you're into sync, it works. But it's the difference between like sync connections with words versus etymology. It's like, oh, this word sounds like this other word, there must be this connection. And it's like, is there technically, this is the kind of mind I am, I'm like, is there technically an etymological connection? And if there's not, I'm like, okay, well, that's a different thing. Like if you want to treat it that there's a connection here because you see a synchronistic connection, like you know, the Son of God, and then you're like, oh, the sun and the sky, and oh, these are connected, but you're like, oh, it's not etymologically connected, you know, like Sephiroth means numeration, it could be connected to sapphire, but it doesn't mean sphere etymologically. But people will be like, oh, the spheres, because when we draw it and we represent it, we see that as a sphere, but that's not really what it is technically. So I'm a technical person, I try to be, you know. So
if we talk about gematria, correct me if I'm wrong on this, right? But isn't the value of gematria for you to personally find connections among a bunch of things, or is gematria supposed to be like, here is an objective connection between these two seemingly unrelated things? Because on a long enough scale, it's like, well, everything's connected.
Yeah, oftentimes, yeah, there's everything's connected, but the specific connections that exist through much of gematria are like so direct, and you're dealing with like something that's like, if you were to apply probability theory to it, you're like, what are the chances? What are the chances that if you add up the 12 diagonal pathways of the Kabbalistic tree and add Gimel, which Freemasons and etc. treat as a diagonal pathway, even though it's vertical, if you add that 13th pathway, you end up with the exact same gematria as Nativot, which is the gematria of those pathways themselves, like those pathways in the first line of the Sefer Yetzirah. Like, what are the chances of that? It's like astronomical, and yet there it is. So it's like, and is that a higher intelligence that's at work there, that's like kind of like speaking to that language is math, and then it's all kind of like extending, all this differentiation is actually extending from one source, and it becomes this point of like total profundity. And so like, you know, people could argue, oh, you could do the same thing with Moby Dick, where you could take Moby Dick and say, look, okay, well, let's apply a number system and see what connects and all of that. But then it gets weird because you're like, well, Moby Dick is actually a religious book. Like the whole thing is a religious allegory. So it's like I don't know, like how many books are you going to do that with? I don't think there's ever been another book besides like the Torah set of books, and like besides Moby Dick, that has that many that people have gone to the trouble to make that many mathematical connections with to prove a point. Like oddly enough, Moby Dick has been like the go-to book for just like doing a comparison. When people talk about what's profound about the Bible, they're like, oh, you can do that with Moby Dick too. It's kind of crazy.
Well, like that's fascinating to me, just because those are the same criticisms that I've read about Kenneth Grant, but I was unfamiliar with the whole premise of the tunnels of Set before. So like the description of it to me was from the like a most superficial surface level, but that these are how you can be in communication with demons or with whatever entities, angels, whatever, like some sort of like pre-existing process. But like how much of that is just flowery words versus dude was talking to some sort of intelligence?
I think he was high. I think he was
It's all just drugs.
Not all, but I think that was actually a factor, because in Thelema, like it's encouraged. Like if you get to like certain levels of like people in Thelema, like frequently they'll just be like meth heads. Like, you know, I'm not saying that like they're all a bunch of meth heads, but they exist where they're like, they routes are like, do what thou wilt, and they're just smoking a crack pipe. Like it's just like, okay, guys, so like complete, you know. So Kenneth, I'm not saying it's true necessarily for Kenneth Grant or even Kenneth Anger too. It's funny, two Kenneths who are both.
It's hard. It's I get them confused sometimes.
Well, Kenneth Grant was a successor of Crowley in the OTO, whereas, you know, Kenneth Anger was just a Thelemite who was a filmmaker in Hollywood who made really weird.
Yeah, one was a follower of Crowley, one was a follower of LaVey.
In a way, yeah. I mean, well, I mean, Crowley believed he was a reincarnation of Levy, so that makes sense. But you know,
I mean Anton LaVey, not Eliphas Levy.
Oh, Anton LaVey. Yeah,
because Kenneth Anger, didn't he used to put like Anton LaVey into some of his movies?
Yes, but keep in mind that Kenneth Anger, if you ever see him speak on the topic, he's just like he's a Thelemite more than he is a Satanist, you know. Like, I mean, he has Lucifer tattooed across his chest, you know, but at the same time,
unless he's accepted Jesus Christ as personal savior, they're all Satanists to me. I don't really care.
Right. Well, then there's Satan and Lucifer. And if people want, you know, the Rolling Stones may just say these are the same thing, even though that song is probably about God. Sympathy for the Devil is probably about God. Like that seems to be who they're talking about, you know. but yeah.
Job's God. Yeah.
Well, we're talking about theosophy. Like that was one of Blavatsky's big things, is that she was like, her big beef with the religious treatment of it is that you're conflating two different aspects of something as though they're just like one and the same, with like, you know, Satan and Lucifer. So there's an argument to be had there, an intellectual theological argument to be had there. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's annoying to read Kenneth Grant as much as I enjoy him, because I just come across these places where he forces a connection. And I'm a total sync head, but I don't like it when people tell you that there's a connection and their basis for that connection is actually like not as solid as what it is that they're projecting if you get into the nitty-gritty of it. I mean, that's what I do. I get into the nuances. I try to get into the nuances and the nitty-gritty of anything, whether we're talking about esoterica or geopolitics or whatever it is. And I try to put aside my own biases as much as possible and just like allow myself to be wrong sometimes if all signs are pointing to me being wrong. I think I was wrong about Ayn Rand, like with like some of her books and what was being communicated, because I read some book of hers that was supposed to be explaining her altruism philosophy or something, and I had a strong reaction to it. But then I have these friends, like even Bill is like really into, you know, the her books, and I'm like, and then I have these longer conversations. I'm like, you know what, maybe I don't know what I'm talking about, you know. And that does happen, you know. But
I mean, she's like got one side of it because she's like so reactionary to the Soviet Union, but I would say, you know, she's an incomplete, not like a, she's not a holistic word.
That's
she's still important.
Right. There's all these places where it's like somebody this is how propaganda works. I was saying it last week.
It's important to do an emphasis of the self, because at the time there was so much urbanism. It wasn't even just communism. Like, you just living in New York City would have also been a reaction, because you would have had people questioning socialism there because of urbanism and this idea that the individual was, an incomplete fraction of effort that unified makes the city. Right. New York City is this thing that will transcend generations of effort. Right. It was just like China today, that kind of ideology. She was against that only to show like, yeah, but look how much can be lived in a lifetime and the value that a life can live and what it can offer. And that's the same thing Buckminster Fuller talked about in terms of new technologies that could revolutionize industry. It's not that she was necessarily wrong in that, but the other aspect, saying that there's no value and that there's only harm from social interaction, that's probably not completely true. There are enough naive cooperatists in the world that will work together that you don't need to believe every single person is a wolf. There are wolves, but not everyone is. And it's also valuable to see, like, wow, look at this, like, look at the Chinese in California in the 1800s, not allowed to buy land. We were saying earlier, not allowed to marry, not allowed to have normal jobs, and somehow we're able to organize, work together, and as a corporation, essentially establish themselves, right? And so that's maybe an alternative look, like a Maoist look, that would argue against Ayn Rand, but they're both valid. And
she has her place, I guess, is all I'm saying. And like, it's just like I'm a proponent of the monomyth. So like, I'm very open to the idea that all of these different perspectives actually form something that transcends perspective if you're to put them all together. And like, that's what a debate should be. A debate shouldn't necessarily be that one person is completely right and another person is completely wrong. It should be like, especially if you're listening to somebody else's debate and you're trying to make sense of it, you should be at least entertaining and not entirely bad faith what somebody on the opposite end of an argument is saying that happens to not be in line with like whatever your proclivities happen to be. You know what I mean? Like, that's the way it should work. Like, I feel like there's no like teacher in the world who's like ever existed for the most part who's like who is the full picture, I mean,
because debates now it's a competitive sport, right? It's not an academic or like a rhetorical exercise as much as it's a sport. So it's kind of about, I completely dominated you and you are my victim, right? Like, I'm standing on top of you, teabagging you. That's kind of the premise of debates, isn't it? Like,
right. I think one of the better, I think we might have talked about this before, but like one of the better like Crowleyan ritual movies is the Hannah Montana movie, right? Like you've seen that. Because totally. Like, she's this alter ego character, right? There's this girl who, when she puts on a wig, she becomes this Masonic character in a ritual and a working, and she goes back home from this because normally she's living in Malibu where she has this fake life, but she goes back home to where everyone knows who she really is. And it's called Crowley Corners, right? She's like living in the Crowley Corners, and there's like the north of it is the meadows, like the ruby meadows, right? So there's the ruby, aspect of it, the ruby slippers, and the emerald tablets, like the
Ruby Ridge, Jack Ruby, you name it. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, but just like in terms of emeralds and rubies, in terms of the sacred stones of the four corners of the Crowley Corners, and the hoedown throwdown, which I think maybe relates too clearly to like what Miley Cyrus did with her life, but the hoedown throwdown folk ritual is sort of their Wicker Man or their maypole ritual that they're having, that is this kind of fertility rite, but it's her becoming herself, and she has to choose between like the left and the right hand path, or like the two sides of herself that make her herself, and everyone knows who she is, so she gets to just choose on the plane, on this flat plane that is the Crowley Corners, who she is, and she reveals the secret to everybody, which is her strength. It's kind of that liberal revelation of the name,
Yeah.
because it's Hannah Montana. The name that is this thing that really is the power symbol. And it's just Hannah Montana. This like
right. And then she flips with Taylor Swift, right? So like right at the same time, I think it was the same year that Hannah Montana, Miley Cyrus twerks on MTV or whatever it was. And then it was like all of a sudden it was like, oh shit, there was like this investment in Hannah Montana to be this like Disney type character. And it's like, oh, she's breaking loose from this role. And now it felt like, oh, well, they had to like take that all that investment that was in Hannah Montana and like put it into Taylor Swift. Maybe I'm sure I'm oversimplifying, but at least synchronistically,
there's
it feels like
definitely
there's
like
something that happened.
there's
there,
a marketing thing that transitions, and so Hannah Montana sexualized at that age, and she went very far with it because that was the social normative. Taylor Swift sexualized as well, just in a completely different way for a completely different generation.
I've got to think on this too, because I don't know if you've ever seen, I had a breakdown on a Cult Disney podcast about the Lizzie McGuire movie, who's another Disney singer / movie star and everything.
Boom. Thank you very much.
This might be a weird question. Have either of you seen the Lizzie McGuire movie?
Of course. Yeah. Lizzie McGuire, wholesome.
Okay.
Wholesome and thick. She's just so voluptuous.
So
I'm very pro Lizzie McGuire.
If you go back and you rewatch the Lizzie McGuire movie, it looks like at the beginning that she's like taking a shower and she's getting ready and she's got makeup and she knocks over this nail polish, whatever. But when I'm watching it, I noticed that there's almost like a gag at one point where she slips in the bathtub when she's like getting into it, and that's not red nail polish, that's actually blood. The opening sequence of the movie, we see Lizzie McGuire dies and the blood comes out, and the entire premise of this movie is that she's graduating, she's becoming an adult, she's leaving childish things, and they're going to go to like Rome. I think they're having like this big Roman adventure. And the very first shot after she goes to the graduation ceremony, which in my opinion is a funeral, and she passes out. And when she comes back to and the movie starts again, they're overlooking Rome, but she's standing right next to somebody that has St. Peter written on the back. So she clearly just died and is now at the gates, and she's talking to St. Peter. It's supposed to be like St. Peter's Basilica or whatever. But anyways, I'm not going to go into like all the little intricate breakdown, but I feel like there's a thing, like they were like even if they couldn't kill the actress, they killed Lizzie McGuire in the medium that she existed in.
She refused to be like a kitten, beta kitten. Like her family and everything were too strongly knit, and they were just unable to control her. And so she completely lost her fame because of that. And, you know, she's married, has kids, and is living like stable without any. And as far as I can tell,
that's a subliminal trope that's in Hot Tub Time Machine and The Shining, where like even like why it's the Overlook Hotel, right? Like there's a image in the center of all of these photographs where if you zoom in on it, you see in the center, and it's Jack, what Kubrick described as an evil reincarnation cycle. So there's something almost like Tibetan Book of the Dead about The Shining, but then in Hot Tub Time Machine, it's actually the same premise in a weird way, because Lou's character actually apparently kills himself at the beginning in his garage, and the rest of the movie is like his projected death trip, where the people who he felt had like basically just like went on with their lives and he lost all connection to, they all come and show up and to like be hanging out with him. We're gonna go on a road trip, we're gonna go to this place, remember this place that we visited when we were like, the whole thing is just like a reincarnation, like as though my life just kept going even though I'm dead. And so like for Jack in The Shining, like the big thing that is what Room 237 is for him is like the big reveal that he's actually like this, he's a ghost too. So he's just like, but the ghost doesn't know he's a ghost. So it's maybe even like The Others with Nicole Kidman, you know what I mean? Where it's just like, does the ghost not realize that they're dead, you know? And like, yeah, I don't know. It's freaking weird.
Maybe Forrest Gump's about a ghost and he died of AIDS.
You remember the when they first showed up, I had that thought the other day. Actually, it's weird that you'd say that because people were discussing Forrest Gump and then the whole thing with Jenny and that she had. And I'm like, did he get it too? Whatever. I don't know. But yeah, when in Hot Tub Time Machine, when they show up at first to that lodge and they're like, oh, is he gonna write a novel and we're gonna get snowed in? He's gonna try and access to death. So it's like, as right when they're pulling up, there's this Shining reference, and then there's the bear. And if you watch Hot Tub Time Machine 2, you see even like they keep that bear as like a character, because the guy in the bear suit, the scene in The Shining when they go up the stairs with the man in the bear suit, and then they have the man in the bear suit. And apparently he went back with them in the Hot Tub Time Machine. Like it's suggested that he's like there among them along with the squirrel. Like it's like there's anyway, whatever. It's a whole thing. Sorry.
Here, I got one last thing, since I know we're getting to the end here, but I got one other thing that I think that Andreas, you specifically, maybe both of you have got some more insight on. David, you were talking about debates. I recently had a debate with someone about adrenochrome, and I brought them back onto my show, and I was just curious, like, what their take was on all the conspiracy theories. And as expected, it was like, they're all fake, they're all BS. It's just for a bunch of idiots, yada yada. And the one thing that came up was the moon landing. And I get the mainstream version and like, how too many people in on it, yada yada.
Not filled with cheese; it's filled with adrenochrome. That's
the one thing that I brought up was that it's so suspicious to me how NASA lost and or degaussed and or recorded over the tapes or whatever. And he was like, that's actually not true. That gets brought up all the time by conspiracy theorists, and that NASA actually
from Andreas.
I saw that NASA actually had a full backup of all of the different tapes.
Allegedly, right? A whole backup that they mysteriously had in his storage.
Here's the thing. Let me finish. Right. Okay. So that they had all these backups, and
they
so
erased the originals, and then they were using backups. They erased the originals because the tapes were too expensive, and they bought backups because the tapes were too expensive. Why didn't they just use the new tapes for the new things and keep what the fuck? Like,
okay, hold on, because I looked deeper into this, and I just wanted to see if you had more context. So the anti-conspiracy premise is like, you idiot, of course they had backups, so even if they recorded over the tapes, they had a better version of it somewhere. So at the time, I like, the very next thing I said was like, oh, okay, anyways, do you believe in Bigfoot? Like, I was just like moving along to other stuff, but that was eating at me, just because that's like the big red flag for me, was the tapes being recorded or thrown out or whatever happened to the tapes. So I did a deep dive on this, and here's what actually I put together, right? So from the actual lunar camera, first of all, inside the shuttle, they had a color TV camera, but when they went outside, it was black and white, and it was like lower resolution. So anyways, they used the lower resolution one, and this is a slow scan signal that's not usually used for broadcast. It's more of like an amateur, like shortwave kind of thing, but they use a slow scan signal, which then gets sent to the receiving station. At the receiving station, they get an RCA scan, and they convert that into a 10-inch monitor. And then the broadcast version that everybody sees on their TV is a camera pointed at that 10-inch monitor, which is itself decoding a slow scan signal through RCA. So long story short, the backup that NASA had was a backup of that camera feed that was recording the screen, which was decoded from the feed, which was not the raw signal. So even if NASA ever had a backup, the backup was of the already lossy, degraded version. And they claim that they had the original slow scans saved on a tape, along with like 45 other tapes. And those are the ones that got degaussed or lost in the early 1980s. So that they really did. Again, long story is that, like, unequivocally, they deleted the originals. Like, they admitted they deleted the originals.
Because when I was at NASA, we were trying to look through the tapes, and that was the problem. And then they end up pulling out a whole collection of tapes that they have in a storage unit. This is a backup. And so the question again is, if tapes are so expensive that they're reusing tapes, then why are they buying expensive tapes for backup? The whole thing doesn't make sense.
You guys seen Project Avalanche?
Yeah.
The same guys who did Nirvana, the band, the movie, whatever. you know, I feel like I have to make an adjustment in my own thinking in terms of just still speculative. But, you know, I've shared with you guys multiple times before. I had this like really long conversation with an ex NASA employee who has since retired. He was like probably 80 or something. Who expressed to me all of this stuff about, like, after this long conversation, how he believed that we went to the moon, but he knows for a fact that we faked footage and that was used for promotional stuff and for the public, whatever. But like with Project Avalanche, I think like it's like white men can't jump or something. It's like I don't. I'm not sure if when we went, because there's footage of us with going around the dark side of the moon where they say they hear that weird noise and they're like reacting to it, you know, like I feel like that's real footage. Like I feel like we're watching astronauts going around the moon, and what's expressed in Project Avalanche is the idea that we could get this far, but we couldn't technically land, and they wanted to give the public that landing. And so I think at this point, I actually lean closer to not like, and it would make sense that this guy would authentically believe. He's like, I know that we went to the moon because I know I was part of this. Like everything that was involved. Was it like the argument that it's like a closed signal, whatever? What they say in Project Avalanche that they did, it was all real until that very last part, and then that was what was filmed, and it gave the impression that the signal was coming from out there. But and people who I've had direct connections with have sent radio signals in 1969 when they had done that mission, and they were like, no, the signal came from there. Well, that doesn't mean that they landed there. So it's very possible that we did a thing where we like went around the moon, and as we did so, we like gave the public like this kind of PR representation of like what was happening. It was probably filmed in a studio, and then like, but it doesn't mean that wasn't an amazing achievement to like go around the, or you know, but it is NASA. NASA's Hebrew to deceive, like NASA in Hebrew. If you say NASA, it means to deceive, just to be clear. So I'm like, that if that were true, that would be a big deception. But at the same time, what a disservice, because they could have just flaunted, oh yeah, we went around the moon. Like, I would be impressed. You made it all that way, like, you know, but no, they had to freaking land, you know, they had to have that show, you know, and I don't know, that makes more sense to me. Like I can entertain that in a speculative way more than I can that the whole thing was just fake and it was Capricorn 1. They win, you know. Yeah.
Do you remember the footage where Buzz Aldrin punches the guy for talking? So that guy's name was Bart Siegel or something like that. And before he got punched, he actually got Buzz Aldrin to sit down and talk about some of his questions. And at one point, Buzz Aldrin's literally, he's talking about how Michael Collins and Buzz originally said they couldn't see stars. And then Michael Collins comes out with a book that says that he could see the stars. And he's like, you know, Buzz, how come Michael says this? And how come this and that? Mm-hmm. And Buzz at one point kind of gives up and he says, look, you need to talk to the administrators at NASA. I was just a guy on a plane. I was a passenger, right? Like he says this in a very specific way. And that was leading up to the part where he gets punched. But he goes to Ed Mitchell from Apollo 14, the same guy that gets punched by, he actually ends up getting physically assaulted by multiple astronauts, but he goes to Ed Mitchell's home of Apollo 14, and he basically says the same thing. He's like, hey, will you put your left hand on the Bible and swear to Jesus, swear to God that you actually went to the moon and all this, and eternal damnation. And on the way out, he finds out that this guy's like trying to say that he never went to the moon. And on the way out, they forgot to de-mic him. And on the mic, Ed Mitchell says, should I get the gun and shoot him, like, before they get out of the office? And he's talking to his son. And they don't shoot him. And as they get into the car, then his son, Adam, on mic says, should I call the CIA and have him whacked? So, like, right. I'm just saying that.
But, dude, wouldn't that explain so much? That because if it was that they made it all the way to the moon and didn't actually land, that for somebody like Buzz Aldrin would be such a point of pride for him, but it would be so frustrating to never be able to say what you did and what you accomplished because they just went that extra step further to put on the show. So it would be like, that would explain so much about his disposition. He's like, motherfucker, I did this thing. You know, but
and
I
why
didn't
Neil Armstrong
really.
would never want to talk about it on interviews ever.
Right. It's just that's what it feels like. Like I don't know. I shouldn't just go by feeling because I'm obviously like I'm not somebody who wants to do that. But like if I'm just to like because I'm dealing with inference, like I can only get so much. I only have access to so
Well,
much. Was
Elon Musk
Richard
wants to
Hoagland
build
full of
this
shit
new,
when he?
city on the moon? So if that happens in the next 5 years, then you'll know that it's possible.
Or it's
Otherwise,
just
we don't
more
need to
blue
know.
beam crap. Disclosure day. Oh man, the internet is just really not caring for this Disclosure Day movie. Apparently, you know, like I don't know, man.
We'll have
It's
to
like
watch it. I'll come over. We'll do that at some point. I can get.
I will never again just take the critics' view or even just people on online to be the authority on what happened because I'm like I'm a kind of an accepting
Spielberg
person.
does
I'm not a harsh critic when it comes to movies. Like I'll watch B movies, C movies. We were watching Gotcha the other night. Like it's just like I'm not as like that much of a critic. So I might like it, but it sounds pretty bad the way people are talking about it. So I don't know.
There are probably better movies. For sure.
Mm-hmm.
Did Bill get his new projector?
Bill canceled the order.
And
he's getting a different projector that's an upgrade from what we have. But I think it was just that was a little much, even what he was wanting to spend. So he got excited about it, but then he was like, should I be doing this? So yeah, he kind of changed his tone on it. But yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
Anyway,
yeah, you gotta chill out with that, dude. That new Titan projector though. Have you seen that thing, Paranoid? It's like
I don't even know what you're talking about now.
There's this new projector at 7,000 lumens. It's basically like a $15,000 projector 5 years ago, but now it's for like on Kickstarter. It's gonna be 6,000, but on Kickstarter it was like $299 or $2,999. It's like nearly 3,000, right? But like you get 7,000 lumens, it's like a laser projector that will blow away all other projectors, basically.
It still feels old because I think the next iteration is just everyone has I mean, I'm biased, but everyone's gonna have glasses that like show you the movies. So now you've got a 200-foot screen in front of you at all times, which also can remember multiple screens. So like if I walk into the other room, there's a 200 screen on the wall. If I come in here, I've got like 8 screens in front of me, all just remembered in your glasses. That seems way more like the long-term thing that everyone's gonna have.
I just don't like shining stuff in my eyes. I like it better the idea that you've got like a geodesic dome and like this is like a curved wall and you're hitting this like giant area and you're like standing in front of it and it's like everywhere
this is a dome projection system.
No, but it can be because it has like a digital AI focusing with optical lens focusing, and you can use any software to like do that. So that would be ideal for me, is like a curved room instead of having a curved wall or something instead of just a flat wall would be really sweet, because you could have an immersive giant, like kind of like a curved monitor, but you're inside of this immersive area and it's on the wall instead of like shining into your eyeballs. And
you guys, I don't remember if how much we talked about the Sphere in Vegas. Did we have this conversation? So like, I might be repeating myself here. I forget what we talked about, but the whole thing with like Fish did like a whole series there. There's like Fish shows. So my housemate Bill is like really into watching those live, and just seeing, but it's driving me freaking nuts when I watch those, because they want to just treat it like it's like a regular concert video. So they keep like zooming in on like the band, everything. And I'm like, the whole time I'm just like, can you just have a vantage point from like the best seat of this view of what they're all watching, and just like stay stationary? Like they keep like, they'll have like a second where they like got this overview view. They're like, oh, there, right there, hold it right there. And then they like have to zoom in. And I'm like, dude, I'm just trying to watch what's being projected. So my hope is I found out that Tool is playing there. And, Ryan's got this connection to Tool because he directed the documentary Blood into Wine. And so I'm like, I want him to like get the message out. Not that it's like up to Maynard or whatever, but I'm like, can we just like, when you do like, because I don't even know, are they just doing one show, or are they doing what Fish did and have a bunch of shows? If it's just one show, I say go ahead, charge as much as you can for the tickets, because I'm not going to make it. But like, if you say $25 or something to stream this, I'm like, just have like, you know, there are people that do their visuals, which are incredible visuals, and even like some plays on like Alex Gray's stuff or whatever, you know, being depicted. Like I would like, I'm like, dude, you know, Mobius is still alive. Can you get him involved? Like, can you just do that, like this epic film and just let us see it? This is my ideal. It's like kind of like fantasy football or something. It's like, I just want to watch a Tool show at the Sphere and like not zoom in on the band. Just show me that like best seat in the house. This is how it's advertised. Like, just let me see that film with the music. Like, and then you could set it up so that you could watch it on like Oculus or whatever, you know what I mean? And just have that full like depth experience. Like, I don't know. I feel like there's like so much potential there.
You'll be able to, on pretty much like any computer that's made in the last 3 or 4 or 5 years, be able to generate, you know, full music based on 6-second clips of Tool or of whatever. You just, you know, like the way I can take a voice and I can train it, you'll be able to train on your voice with very little tokens, very little GPU. It'll be able to very quickly pump out a song in the style of exactly, and there'll be no one to stop you because it'll be local. You know, that's the, you'll be having your own Tool albums. You'll be able to produce your own Tool movies.
Well, we're not completely there yet. So, but I got your
prophetic. We were closer last year than we are now, because last year there wasn't like legal things that were destroying the model's training. But next year it won't matter because the software exists now, open source, that you can put your own training in. And so from there, they won't be able to stop people that are training models. And that's what's kind of interesting about the Fable situation. That's what's cool about, like, someone, I think it was at Quake, brought up FFmpeg. There was like 23 vulnerabilities that were discovered, and they had to update it, and it has holes in it that you could have gotten into anybody's system ever, who, because the entire internet, everything's basically held together by these media codecs, DVDs on, MP3s on, all of it, everything in your HTML, it's all using these media codecs. So all of these had vulnerabilities, so everyone's system could have been hacked into, and some of these vulnerabilities go back to like 2003. So it's, you know,
I almost feel like Flash is vindicated, maybe a little bit too late, but this was what killed Flash, was Steve Jobs trying to say like, oh, government, Flash could be a vector into these important systems. And all along, it was literally every single media codec and driver that pretty much ever, I mean, even like Linux.
Steve Jobs is like Donald Trump time traveler. If he hadn't stopped, he basically stopped Flash, was stopping the war. The war wouldn't have been with China. The war would have been with Adobe in the 2060s, 2040s, because the power that they had amassed. And now what's going on is watching them disintegrate is so beautiful. Over the last 20 years, they've completely destroyed their company model, their software. They don't innovate. They've never innovated since the beginning. You know, they used to the first 5 years.
I'm so ready for Fable 5 or 6 or 10 or whatever to come out and just replace Photoshop, After Effects, Illustrator, and Design.
Do you guys?
I mean, my Rook app I should show off is, like, I would say at least as good as iMovie and has features of Final Cut Pro and Premiere. It could very easily replace Premiere and have features that they just won't be able to offer. And that's just because, I don't know, I'm being an idiot, because we could easily use Blender, and Blender's video editor is better than Premiere's in about 18 ways. There's a few
Premiere
things
sucks.
where, like, sorry?
Premiere sucks in my experience.
Yeah, Premiere's got some problems. Premiere does have some features, like in terms of color grading, that's cool. DaVinci Resolve is the peak in terms of color grading, but there's more and more people that are sharing on GitHub their color grading schemes that you can use. So I don't see how that is an inevitable long-term, you know, Resolve is not going to be forever.
So James Holmes's science talk, when he's talking about Flash, do you guys understand that? Because honestly, I don't. Like, when he's talking about the time gap and the illusion and like manipulating time for people psychologically,
it's showing you something before you click on it, and then when you click on it, it makes you feel like you've predicted it. It's just trying to use neurolinguistic programming to make you feel like you clicked on it before it happened that makes you feel
it
like
looks like not when he's giving that talk, obviously he seems totally normal when he's giving that talk for the most part, although it seems he's a little awkward or something. But like if you look at that guy in court and like even like the whole like everything that followed, it's like this happened apparently according to everybody who knew him within like 3 weeks. So it's just like, whoa, what happened to that guy? And it just feels like what he's describing is that he's actually the test subject, but he thinks that it's other people. But is the time gap that he's experiencing when he's describing the letters and Flash and all this, which is like, they're basically just letters of the alphabet, and like his whole description of that, I'm like, it almost feels like he's like describing like something that is almost Kabbalistic, and like, but like applying
an experiment itself. That might explain some things.
That's what I'm saying. Like, I'm curious from you guys. Like, you know more about this than me with Flash and all of this. I'm like, is that what's happening?
ActionScript was like 20 years ahead of its time, because things we're doing now are things you could do with Flash at the time, and it was completely
still can't really get to the same thing. What Flash did too was that it was the bridge between animators and programmers. And up until that point, and I guess game makers, it was the only thing that all three different completely disciplines could come together and work on one cohesive thing in like a shared language that didn't really exist up until that point. So like the fact that it's gone, but it also allowed very visual thinkers. Like you could visually program, not like Visual Basic, but like the things that I'm animating to actually be able to click on it and put code on that thing, which was actually derived from Flash's predecessor called Director.
Maybe you're right. Like there's no GUI like HTML editor with a timeline that I'm aware of that works the same way as Flash, because there's no reason you can't use CSS and HTML and JavaScript if you need to, to do everything Flash could do, but to ActionScript could do. But ActionScript had this app that was like, iMovie, you could move a timeline and you could move things around. You could animate a show, or you could have a game where there's puppeted controls with your keyboard. And so those like primal things made it very practical. But those are all things you can do now. And at its height, Flash had 3D graphics. It could do things that like you could do with you could basically do anything an N64 could do, at least, or PlayStation level, in a web page. You could have 3D worlds with race cars and spaceships and everything. And you could have it controlled by I was using Wiimotes to control VJ sets where people could like play games with the Wiimote, hit it, wave it around, throw it to somebody, and it would.
You know what? Flash was freaking Tower of Babel, man. Because as soon as it fell, it was like it splintered into 20 directions. Where like the game people went off and they did Unity and Unreal and Godot, and then like the audio people went off and they went into Touch Designer, into MXP, and like Ableton and stuff. But like at one point before the tower fell, they were all working together on like single projects, and like just like you mentioned, right? Music using Wiimotes and 3D, and like that still has not been recaptured since Steve Jobs. I hope Steve Jobs dies. I'm just gonna put it that way.
We lost the wrong billionaire.
We lost the wrong billionaire.
Yeah,
no,
but I just
let him die. Just like said, "Oh, you want to eat nothing but flowers and sprouts? Go ahead."
I want to question this whole thing where like, because if you're describing like the frontal lobe disability that like so many people have, especially if you smoked a ton of pot in your early 20s, because your frontal lobe continues to develop during that time, it has everything to do with cause and effect relationship. I think, this is my theory, is that there's like a massive dysfunction that people haven't like necessarily had explained, like why psychologically there's a little horse before the cart thing that's happening, where people are reacting to things before they even know like the full backstory or whatever. It's just like there's like a jump to conclusions, Matt. But like if you look at that James Holmes communication around what it is that they're experimenting with, it's literally like a time illusion where you're getting something that you think is like, so if you were to manipulate somebody's action and get them to go along, like, isn't that like the ultimate form of propaganda that he's describing, where it's just literally like a time illusion where you've now accepted something before you've even understood all the mechanisms behind it, because maybe you're ahead of it?
My mind always goes to like, just maybe this is just trying to be like in opposition to it, right? But maybe that's just a limitation of our tools, because the tools that we use that tell us, hey, this was shown to you before you made the decision, maybe it's that tool that is misreading that, and that it's not such a linear process. It's not like I see thing, I make decision, I do action. It might, like, those three things might be happening simultaneously, but our limitation is forcing us to interpret it linear. So we might have a tool that like pokes a hole in our reality, but James Holmes' version of that was almost like the future is somehow removed. Like it's almost like a deterministic thing that's happening, and we're tricking ourselves into having the option.
He's describing the issue that's described in AI, in Kubrick's AI, beyond what the film is, but just in Orga and Mecha and this dichotomy, because he's saying we're interacting with this technology and they're putting people into a place where they're experiencing an illusion that's connected to the technology. So my feeling is that the Orga part, this is, you know, whatever. I mean, we went this whole time saying that, like, showing like examples where like marijuana is actually totally safe. It's good. I get it. Like, I agree to some extent, but I think that there's the thing that we're missing is that in brain development, that people are actually like had been stunting their brain development in their frontal lobe, so that for the rest of their life, to some degree, unless I'm sure there's exercises that could shift this, but people's like tendency is just to like not really understand like it's actually like a physical disability of actual cause and effect. So there's like a reactivity there. Like, I'm just saying, like, James Holmes' speech about that time illusion like seems to be like he's describing the way that technology is influencing our consciousness, but I'm like looking at it, I'm like, I think both are happening at the same time, that you have something that's actually like a physical defect that has been a developmental like disadvantage for people, and they're being taken advantage of through that physical disadvantage. Like, I don't know, man.
You see this video? This guy made a map. Let me see if I can, where basically it's I think it's a 10-dimensional map, or maybe it's like a 5-dimensional map, 4D. So it has 3-dimensional space, but if you move around, then time will move as well. So like it goes from being a forest to a desert to an ice world. There's buildings, there's trees, like the entire timeline is an extra timeline. And so he created, so like the object will change over time, right? And there's also multiple possibilities, like where the object will change one way or change another way, like infinite ways it can change. So he's limited it to like some probable ways, like it apocalypse out at certain points, or it goes here or it goes there. And so he's got all the probabilities in 4D shapes on a 5D plane. And then he uses like lower dimensional math, like rotation math, to understand how time translates into rotations. So this thing can learn based on the XY, a Z coordinate that is a rotating thing. And you can see how it changes over a period of time. And so he creates this like math sequence. Actually, like he uses like a traditional math sequence from the 1700s, but he applies it to like 5th-dimensional strings and gives it to this little guy. I'm trying to get to the picture of him. You can see this little red character. And then it has a reinforcement learning that learns based on its experiences as the world changes.
That was a hexagram in the middle of that, by the way.
Yeah, because it has to be able to understand the 6-dimensional, the 5-dimensional shapes. It has to be able to supersede them. So it knows to move left and right, you know, like X and Y. It can move forward and backwards and goes up and down. But it has to also learn that when it moves, it's rotating time as well. So it has to be able to learn. So it has to roll through time for a period of hours. I think after like 11 hours, it starts to understand enough to kind of control the timeline. See, now it's able to move in one time, specifically rotating just correctly enough that as it moves, it can stay in one time. So then he makes a experiment where he litters these units of food, let's say, throughout the timeline, and this object has to sweep like a vacuum through every space in the entire timeline in order to grab all of these little units of food. It's pretty crazy.
And is this is why my energy bill is going up this month?
I mean, I think you got to look at it the other way. Like, you're worried about whether or not, you're worried about national security. And this thing is, AI is learning how to operate in 10-dimensional space, metaspace. Like, you got to broaden your horizons a bit. This is pretty insane.
Yeah, although a lot of that stuff, when they talk about dimensionality, it's literally it's really the same thing, just presenting itself using theoretics and a replicating model as though this was the thing in itself. But that's kind of what I'm saying with like Mecha and Orga, is that we're looking at something that we can objectify, but consciousness itself can't be objectified because the witness, quote unquote, is always before. So you can't back up far enough into the source necessarily to be able to.
I mean, dude, you can literally get it to the point where you've got like 130 or so different particulates that are voxels, so 3-dimensional pixels, and that they all bond together in ways to make items, right? Items that composite into larger composites. And those things could make geological and then therefore biological units in a virtual simulation. And
right,
is more processing. Like,
well, that's the issue with Mandelbrot's set, is that with Mandelbrot, you want to you go into any part and you find the whole, but it's always the same. It's the same. Like in Mandelbrot, it's literally the same thing over and over. Whereas where we're headed and what's happening with AI, it's in that replicating process. Are they going to get to the point that we're actually seeing the same thing that we see in nature, where you have the same principal dynamics, like you were mentioning the hexagram? Like, it's not really just the hexagram, it's the idea that from this foundational shape you can extrapolate all the Platonic solids. So it's what makes sacred geometry sacred is just that. It's like, is it a foundation from which all of the rest you can find their expression? Yet if you were just doing that with geometry, it wouldn't necessarily be what we actually see and experience in nature, because you have this endless diversity where it's just like, how many different ways can you rearrange 2 eyes, a nose, and a mouth? You know what I mean? As an example, it's like every flower is different, every snowflake is different, it's just like, so
I feel like the more RAM, the closer you're gonna get. Like, especially
you got enough VRAM, then
yeah. Once you start breaking things down into elements and you start bonding elements together and you start looking at all the range and you're studying already existing things, then it's going to be very quick. I mean, AI has already discovered new Go game patterns that no one ever predicted before, or new amino acid protein folds and unfolds that have never been in nature yet, or if they haven't been discovered. So, I mean, there's a lot of things that all it has to do is kind of get to the office in the morning and see how things are done, and it'll kind of pick up what's been laid down and start doing it.
I like a comment that says the noble lie, Platonic forms, because there's truth to that, and at the same time, we're like, that's the thing to acknowledge, is like, don't, like, this is the big warning throughout so many old schools of esoteric thought, is don't take the replication to be the source. Don't take this to be the thing in itself. Yet we're still in this world dealing with replication. They say there's no straight lines in nature. Well, how do you communicate? Like, how do you articulate what we see in nature without straight lines? Like, and that's the thing about, like, when you make like a 3-dimensional star tetrahedron, is you're looking at a vector metric where every single vector is the exact same length. But where do you see that in nature? If you actually saw that in nature, it would be static. It wouldn't be standing out in space, because that's so, like, it both is and isn't a lie, because what's being pointed to in that idealistic view of those Platonic shapes is something that we don't actually see in nature. Yet at the same time, there's no better way, there's no more direct way to articulate the thing so that we can even comprehend it. Like, if we're trying to like actually understand the thing without that, that would just be, we're merging into it. We're like being one with it. That's why the name is ephemeral, like, because to understand the name is to like just be that, but if as soon as you start trying to understand something intellectually, you have to remove yourself from that thing in order to interpret it, So now we're dealing with people with all, like we were saying before about the mono myth, is that we have all these different angles on something. And if you were to take all of those angles and all those perceptions and just, if you could somehow objectively just see them all at once, you'd get the knowledge, the understanding, but we're just not there because we're all these little fragments trying to get it and arguing with each other, you know. So like I don't know what else to do. Like I think this is just some developmental thing that we have to do to understand the deeper thing, is to go through this process of just experiencing disagreement because there's a defect in the replication. Like it's not quite that. So you're like, what would it take? How much RAM would it take to literally have the perfect imitation of what exists in nature? Like my feeling is like, even if you had all the RAM in the world, it still wouldn't be that. You could just get like almost a perfect mirror of that, but it's still a mirror, you know? So that's why I'm just like, kick over the robots, you know. I don't really care. I have no sympathy for robots. I don't care. You're not gonna, like, you know, there's no amount of realness that you could put into that robot where I'm going to react to it. As long as provided I know it's a robot, there's no point where I'm actually going to have a shred of sympathy for that robot.
What if that robot's a Palestinian?
Then it's still a robot. It's like, I don't care about like all the identity politics.
I got it. And that goes I understand you don't care, and maybe that's the difference between us.
Finish the sentence about identity politics, man. Like identity politics is freaking ridiculous, dude. It's like, talk about the cart before the horse. We're like literally like the description's not the described. We're literally like having a fight over words while the thing in itself seems to like be like secondary to that. So, oh, by the way, you should go not just to my page, but show Little Ghost. Play the video if there is one. Look at videos. Yeah. So like, this is crazy, dude. Like he's been working on this game for like so many years.
Do I know? I do not know. Should I go? I should not go. Does it flow? And will anyone understand? I'm in bed with my ideas. You should feel how good it feels. It's so good. I almost can't face the day in this world. Do I know? I do not. Should I go? I should not. Does it flow? And will anyone understand? I'm in bed with my ideals. Did you feel how good it feels? So good. I almost can't face the day in this world.
Oh, you can choose music. Oh, we're bopping right now. What? That little Tamagotchi gave us a bop.
I got the last hero card. Oh, that's moving. Oh my god, this is awesome.
Wow.
Yeah, that had Nahadar's music, and that was in that clip, and that's like an older song of hers. But yeah, so it's cool. It's like got a bunch of our friends' music in it, and I'm in it. Bill's in it. Like all the people in the sync community, like our voices are in it because that's clips from podcasts and all kinds of stuff. But yeah, a lot of work has gone into that guy, and so
that's awesome. That looks awesome.
Yeah, it's dope. It looks like a dope game, right?
Dude.
But yeah, so.
Yeah, I have to check out Little Ghost, and then also make sure you watch the Synctank. The MK Ultrasound videos, Sync book films, all the Sync flicks that are here. Mm-hmm. Bluebird with the Electric Lights Orchestra Eldorado. That one we talked about last week. That's pretty cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh man, this is the wrong page. I did the thing with the thing that it doesn't matter.
What did you do?
I was showing your page, but it wasn't loading because my life is hard.
Oh, okay.
I was right here, and then I showed it.
Yeah.
But then so Paranoid American. Great.
As always, I mean, the biggest one is that Illuminati Exposed Chick Track pamphlet. I mean, this is the one that set the new standard, and this one was the first one in color. And because of this pamphlet, I'm going to make sure all the following ones are going to be in color. So like the one that David and I have been working on for the last couple years now, which is pretty much done. By the way, David and I met last week after the show, and we went over all the different notes, and the artist is now working on the final inks and colors and everything. So the Golden Bough comic we've been working on is as close to getting done as it's ever been. So if you want to see what that's going to look like, you should absolutely grab a copy of this one, $5. It's the most comprehensive breakdown of the Bavarian Illuminati ever illustrated. I've found them all, and I've never found anything that actually got into the fine specific details, name dates, actual ritual breakdowns of like the symbolism, handshakes, ciphers. Everything is in this one little pamphlet. So if you want to grab one, add a little note that you came across it on Synctank, and I'll throw in a whole bunch of extra free stuff too.
So I think we may have discussed the particulars around. I know that last week you were talking about kind of brainstorming for a title. I think I'm kind of attached, and we could have a fight over this if you want, but I think I'm attached to the idea of in small print saying this isn't mythology, and then just in larger print, this is your life. I could see that as the pamphlet that is sitting there, and you see, yeah, okay, cool.
We're agreed. Because, and I don't remember if you knew this or not, but Jack Chick's first big comic was This Was Your Life, because the whole premise is that when you died, you had to review your life with God, and that God was going to like send you to hell because of like a dirty joke you told in middle school or whatever.
Right,
but
because your organs testify against you at the time of death.
So the first one was This Was Your Life. So this one is going to be This Is Your Life, not This Was Your Life. No,
and the small print of This Isn't Mythology, because that's the actual Kubrick quote, about the Golden Bough. But,
done. Yeah, you don't have to fight me on it. Done.
Okay, good.
All right. Well, see you guys next week. Peace out.
Peace.